Chapter 925. The moment they alighted, Bojio's boyfriend Aura returned. The doctor glanced up for the third time. It's a small injury, there's no need to stay in the hospital. Just make sure it doesn't come into contact with water. The doctor wanted to tell her that it was just a cut and there wasn't a need to come to the hospital. Bojio was finally convinced, but at this moment, she paused and glanced up. He is a professionally sports player and his hand is important to him. Do you want to take a scan to check his wrist? If you insist. The doctor didn't think there was a need, but the family member had requested for a scan. But why was there such a dumb person? It was just an external injury and they wanted a scan? The doctor shook his head. Chin Mo reached out to take the pen from the doctor's hand, his voice calm. There's no need, just prescribe some medicine for external injuries. The doctor let out a long sigh. Fortunately, this person still had some sense. Bojio wasn't aware that she was being treated as an irrational person. She took the prescription while instructing the Almighty, don't eat spicy food, don't smoke. With that, she paused and reached out to take the cigarettes and phone from his pocket. I'll help you settle this. Chin Mo arched a brow at the youngster beside him. Tell me, if you don't follow me back tonight, my hand won't be able to come into contact with water. How are you going to solve the problem of bathing? The doctor and the patients around them exchanged glances. Bojio paused. I really have something to do today. Tomorrow. Chin Mo agreed without a change in expression. Change the bandages tomorrow, you can't expect me to do it myself. Almighty Chin was indeed scheming. If Magician and his gang had heard this, they would definitely have ridiculed him. Back then, when he had treated his own gunshot wound, he hadn't even used anesthetics. Now, it was just a cut on his finger. The Almighty's words made Bojio's conscience feel uneasy. After all, the Almighty had been the one who had given her the medicine when her eyes had been infected. All right. Bojio nodded, the silver whirlpool above her head turning furry the moment she got serious. Chin Mo reached out and pressed the ahog down. In less than a second, it rose up again. Chin Mo arched a brow. Bojio smiled, showing her white canine teeth. It's time for a haircut. Don't you want to grow it out? Chin Mo's tone sounded casual. Bojio paused. I won't consider it for now. Yes. That's it? Bojio couldn't see anything from the Almighty's attitude. However, there was one thing that she was very clear about. All of her actions today were basically exposing herself. Smith's arrogance prevented him from picking up any other information. But the Almighty was not Smith. Not a single detail was left out in front of him. Her victory was in the aspect of rebirth. But Bojio knew that even this link was slowly collapsing. The Almighty was too smart. His tone sounded as though Chin Mo was asking a stupid question. Chin Mo glanced at him. I have many questions. For example? Smith shrugged his shoulders. It was more or less as if he was implying that Smith had to ask some meaningful questions to be worthy of his answers. Chin Mo watched him, his tone unhurried. How many times have you lost to Z? Smith, if one had to use a word to describe Smith's current reaction, it would be as if someone had stabbed him in the chest with a knife. It was really painful. Even the expression on his face was rejecting such a question. Chin Mo replied nonchalantly, it doesn't seem easy to answer, but I've studied psychology before. From your reaction, I don't think you've won even once. This time, Smith froze. He cursed and wanted to argue with Chin Mo, but Chin Mo didn't say a word. Instead, he turned to Chin Mo and cursed. That person had already turned around to leave. His voice was still very indifferent and noble. With your level, it is indeed so. The interrogation must have been tiring. Bang! The door to the interrogation room was closed behind him. This was the first time Smith had the urge to kill someone. Bojio was right, wherever the Almighty was around, his venomous tongue could cause a person to collapse. In reality, there wasn't a need for weapons. But Bojo hadn't expected the Almighty to use his venomous tongue to find out about her. Fortunately, she hadn't been to Jiang City before. There was something Smith wasn't aware of. Bojo had been to China, the Golden Triangle where the three countries met. That was where she had met with the fatal ambush. Time trickled by slowly. After separating from Qin Mo, Bojo thought that since she was going to accompany He Honghua to the banquet, she couldn't wear a cleaner's uniform. I need to buy a decent suit, and I need to cut my hair. The youngster stuffed a hand into her pocket, blowing at the fringe in front of her eyes. She had wanted to get a haircut before heading to the men's clothing store on the same floor to pick a suit. Who knew that as soon as she entered the shop, she would be pointed at and shouted, F***CK. F***CK. Expert. The Almighty. My savior. Bojo glanced at the patient. It's you. The Almighty. The thorn-head youngster had probably just gotten a haircut. His haircut was hilarious. Let's put aside the grudge between number 1 and number 2 middle school. Can you do me a favor? Bojo smiled lazily. I can't, I'm in a hurry to get my hair cut. The one washing hair in this store is my little brother. The thorn-head youngster was serious. Help me play a game, I'll get him to wash your hair first. Bojo arched a brow. Why do you have so many little brothers? We're both working and studying, it isn't easy. The thorn-head youngster acted like a gangster. Bojo was helpless. Use your account to play? Is it another fight for honor? It isn't honor this time. The thorn-head youngster was a little bashful. It's a girl I like, I promised to carry her in the Hero mobile game. Bojo didn't need to ask for the outcome, there was a huge hole in front of her and she still had to carry him. I didn't expect her to be better than me. The gangster was a little incredulous when he said this. I just told her that I need to change to a place with a better network for another round. Actually, you have to set aside some time to find someone to carry you. Bojo took out the cigarette she had snatched from the Almighty and tossed it to the thorn-head youngster. Get someone to wash my hair. In the future, don't go looking for trouble with first middle school, especially the girls. In the future, if you see a girl from first middle school walking along the commercial street and being targeted by thieves, you guys from second middle school have to protect her. The thorn-head youngster replied immediately, that's the work of trash. Don't worry, I'll give them an order tomorrow. Even though the students from second middle school aren't very good in their studies, we are very protective of the fairer sex. Was that how they were supposed to be protective of the fairer sex? Bojo arched a brow and didn't say anything else. When she lay down, she took the thorn-head youngster's phone. He stood beside her, pointing at the profile picture in his friend list. This is it, isn't she pretty? Don't snatch her from me, I'm warning you. Dearest, it's just a photoshopped picture, I really can't tell if she's pretty or not. Even if she's pretty, can she be as pretty as Almighty Qin? Bojo thought to herself. Even if she liked someone, she would prefer the prettiest one. What was this? If an ordinary person heard this, they would definitely feel that there wasn't any comparison. It was a guy and a girl. But he was still a Chinibu. You don't say, young Master Qin is indeed handsome, the thorn-head youngster replied seriously. Bojo took the opportunity to enter the game, preparing to play casually. However, he had a request. You have to choose an assassin later. Aren't you best at playing as a tank? She still remembered the first time they had met. This Chinibu playstyle had always been charging forward. The gangster shook his head, you don't understand. Nowadays, the girls are obsessed with playing the assassin. I don't know who started the trend. He paused, it's you. When you were in the pro league, you always played the assassin, and you always got first clears. No, let me ask you, have you ever considered the feelings of people like us? It's not good to chase after girls. Everyone talks about your Highness Joe every day, it's depressing. Bojo, she couldn't reply. She hadn't been to school for a long time and wasn't aware of the situation. First, she adjusted the page. Since she had chosen the assassin, she changed the attributes slightly. Then she invited him in and the game began. At this moment, the shampoo youngster had already started to apply the conditioner. Hero had always been a game that allowed for better teamwork between teammates. Bojo switched on the receiver but didn't turn on the microphone. She could clearly hear a girl's voice on the other side. It was from the attacking sorcerer. "Hey, Ching, why do you always drag him into such a trap?" "He isn't a trap." The girl named Ching was playing as a tank. Bojo looked at the team composition. It was rather reasonable. She didn't care about what the other party said and charged straight into the opponent's jungle. What did Big Spade like to do when he was playing? Of course, it was to attack the opponent's jungle, leaving them with nothing to attack. After charging over, she didn't start fighting immediately. Instead, she hid in the bushes beside the blue beast. At this moment, the attacking sorcerer spoke again. "Hey, can you come back? You only know how to send yourself to death. Don't bother about him, he's from number 2 middle school. His results aren't good and his brain isn't working well," the archer spoke. He sounded arrogant. The thorn-head youngster clenched his fists tightly but didn't say a word. Bojo glanced up at him. After all, she understood this Chinibu. He was the type of person who would get angry at the slightest provocation. Yet, he didn't retort. Bojo swept her gaze over the screen once more. Her gaze landed on the girl playing as the tank. It seemed like she really liked this person. His brain isn't bad. The tank girl's voice turned cold. "If you guys continue acting like this, stop playing." The archer seemed to be afraid of the girl's anger. "I'm just afraid he will send himself to death. If you don't like it, I won't say it. I'll lead you guys to victory later." The tank girl didn't reply. Instead, the attacking sorcerer spoke. "I knew we wouldn't lose with you around. Almighty, lead us." "No problem, as long as someone doesn't send himself too far." The archer's tone was still filled with mockery. Chapter 926. Bojo swung her long sword and revealed herself. The lethality she exuded was off the charts. It was obvious that the enemy assassin hadn't expected someone to snatch the beasts at the start of the game. Caught off guard, not only did he lose the wild monster, but he was also targeted by a long sword. F***ck, it can't be. He hurried towards the sorcerer in the middle lane. It was a pity. He wasn't as fast as the youngster's precise movements. She leaped up and used her big move. In just a few minutes, Bojo had reduced the enemy's HP to a critical level. The man gritted his teeth and finally escaped to the defense tower. However, was this the end of it? He had obviously forgotten. Before he entered the tower, the young man threw a flying dagger straight at his head. Even though he had escaped into the defense tower, the damage was still there. He wanted to return to the city as soon as he took a step. A deafening sound effect appeared in the game. K.O. First HP. A magnificent first kill. However, some noobs didn't look at the map. Before the numbers appeared, the attacking sorcerer spoke. "Didn't I tell you not to send yourself to death? You must be drunk to play like this." Before she could finish her sentence, the numbers on the screen changed. 1 to 0. Did that mean they had killed someone? The girl's voice froze. She couldn't believe it and forgot to close her mouth. That was the first kill. And they were in the enemy's territory. With the noob's abilities, it wasn't possible. Lucky. The archer's voice was heard. The sorcerer replied immediately. He probably burned some incense before he left. Heh. Bojo was still running on the map. Once the enemy discovered her tracks, they would definitely chase after her. At this moment, she had killed someone and couldn't be at full HP. She was left with half a tank of HP. Once she was controlled by the sorcerer, she would be killed instantly. But with her speed and maneuvering, an ordinary person wouldn't be able to control her. At this moment, Bojo sent a signal to gather. The signal was sent to the sorcerer in the middle lane. Usually, the assassin would lure the enemy over. As long as the sorcerer in the middle lane cooperated, the two of them would be able to kill the enemy instantly. Bojo paused in the bushes, preparing to fight back. However, there was a problem. The mage girl in the middle lane didn't hear the signal at all. She didn't even look at the map coordinates and was still clearing the troops. Bojo was an assassin. The moment she rushed forward, she couldn't retreat in time. The opposing mage unleashed a powerful spell. Bojo used the strength in her fingers to turn and avoid the fatal blow. However, at this moment, it was no longer suitable to counterattack. It was just the start of the game, and she didn't have enough money or HP. Her opponent was full HP, and the map showed that reinforcements had arrived. Bojo turned and returned to her own tower. This time, she finally understood what it meant to be tricked. He had always played in the Pro League, and his teammates would only have problems with their hand speed or technique. But this person. Bojo glanced at her sorcerer and archer. They didn't even know how to look at the map and didn't listen for signals. How did they get the confidence to fly with the Almighty? There was one more thing Bojo wanted to ask. Why was an archer shooting the blue beasts? Not fighting the red beasts, but the blue beasts? Was he trying to steal her wild? His strength was a trap for his teammates, dear. Bojo scanned the area and pondered for a moment. She decided to adjust her strategy. Chapter 927. They had to develop and strengthen their finances before they could produce equipment. That was the decision Bojo made after understanding the situation. Which meant that she wasn't going to participate in the team battle in the near future. Everyone who played the assassin class knew how lethal an assassin could be, right? No, the long-range archers and some attacking sorcerers were the main attackers. Under normal circumstances, the assassin class not only had strict control requirements, but more importantly, they had to be able to analyze the situation. They had to know when to attack, when to retreat, and when to counterattack. The strengths of an assassin were speed and explosive power. However, if one thought that an assassin should be like a tank and only charge forward without caring about anything else, then that would be a big mistake. It was obvious that the archer and sorceress in the middle lane thought that way. When the enemy rushed over, they shouted, "Hurry, gather in the middle lane, prepare for the team battle." The defense towers on both the top and bottom lane were being attacked. At this moment, they weren't going to save the towers and were going for a team battle. Bojo obviously wouldn't head over immediately. She would clear the troops around the tower and hit money everywhere she went. Her hand speed was so fast that the gangster was stunned. That was what he was thinking. Why did the same account play the same game character? How did that character become so powerful in the hands of the other party? It was unbelievable. Just as Bojo was about to attack the defense tower after the enemy on the top lane escaped with low HP, something happened in the middle lane. The sorceress came out of the defense tower. She didn't even release a stun fireball, instead, she used her big move. She was confident that she would be able to destroy the enemy with a big move. But it was obvious that she didn't just release her skill, she didn't measure the distance. That big move had indeed hit something, but it hadn't hit the opponent. This was really awkward. Such a low-level mistake in the game. Seriously, she didn't know what to say. She could only say that she couldn't escape. Sure enough, the opponent's assassin leaped over and gave the female sorceress a close-range critical strike. Together with a stun from the archer, the female sorceress was killed in less than 2 seconds. Bojo's 1v0 became a 1v1. It was a draw. The male archer ignored the tower and ran towards the city with full HP and mana. As he ran, he asked, "Where's the assassin? Don't you know about the team battle? Do you have to do this?" Bojo couldn't be bothered to say anything to those who abandoned their towers when they were full of health. She skimmed over from the wilderness and jumped into her defense tower. She cleared the troops, protected the tower, and earned money. She did everything without any delay. Then, she jumped to the right and continued to kill monsters in the wilderness. She continued to increase her finances. Seeing this, the female magician's voice was filled with anger. Why are you still fighting monsters at a time like this? Don't you know how to team up? Do you even know how to fight? The girl who was playing the tank couldn't help but say, assassins need wild monsters the most. You guys just need to defend the tower. Don't form a party first. We don't need a party in the early stages. Then he's too much of a scammer. The female magus voice was still unhappy. If this goes on, we'll be dragged down and lose. Bojo arched a brow as she held on to the red beasts. She only had time to type one word. Oh. It was that, oh, word that made the female magician so angry. Chapter 928. Forget it. The male archer turned on the voice chat. He can do whatever he wants, we'll team up and attack the middle lane. The female sorcerer replied confidently, MMH, she maneuvered her character to move forward. There were two opponents as well. It was the same formation, a sorcerer and an archer. The female sorcerer saw the opportunity and immediately used a big move. This time, she managed to catch someone. But the opponent's sorcerer seemed to know how to play. He released a stun fireball and with the help of the archer, he knocked the female sorcerer out on the spot. The next moment, he used a big move. KO. The female sorcerer died again. This time, the male archer didn't run because he was hit by the arrow, slowing him down. He couldn't escape even if he wanted to. Seeing that he was about to be killed to critical health. Right at this moment, a sharp blade flashed past. A small knife symbol appeared above the archer's head. The next moment, Bojo appeared like a bolt of lightning, a perfect explosive attack. In an instant, the archer's HP dropped to a critical level. At this moment, the sorcerer used another stun ball. Bojo tilted her body, dodging it perfectly. She threw a flying knife at the sorcerer before sweeping her long sword. Both the archer and sorcerer were on the verge of death. At this moment, their lives were hanging by a thread. Bojo just needed one more move and she would be able to take both lives easily. However, the male archer wasn't aware of the situation and continued to attack fiercely. Coincidentally, it was shot by him just like that. The game's music blared. Double kill. The screen showed that the two lives were taken by the male archer. Hence, the female sorcerer's tone became even more eccentric. Look, that's the Almighty. He should learn from some traps and just charge recklessly. It's fine, I'll be watching from the back. Even if he charges into the crowd, he'll still be able to survive. The male archer really believed that he had taken the credit for the double kill. This kid seemed to have forgotten who had saved him when he was almost killed. Why was it the other way around? Bojo glanced over at the thorn-head youngster. Where did he come from? Is that how they play? He's from number 1 middle school. The gangster clenched his fist. That's why I don't like these students from number 1 middle school. But I have to admit that he's very good at playing games. Bojo's lips twitched. You call this good at gaming? He just got a double kill, the gangster said seriously. Bojo arched a brow, her tone calm. He won't have the chance to kill again. Why? The gangster didn't understand. Bojo moved her fingers, clearing another wave of soldiers. Without me, he would have been killed. It was a fitting scene. The moment Bojo finished her sentence, news of someone being wiped out came from the middle lane. This time, it was the opponent who got the double kill. The score changed from 3-2 to 3-4. It was obvious that Bojo's team was lagging behind. Not only that, but they also destroyed one of their defense towers. Even the second defense tower was only left with half of its original structure. Fortunately, there was still the girl who played the tank. After returning to her position, she defended the half wall of the tower. The male archer was rather humble. It's my fault this time, I made a mistake. The female sorcerer immediately said, it's okay to die once, everyone makes mistakes, unlike some noob who is still fighting in the wilderness while we are in a team battle. But just as the female sorcerer said this, another sound effect played. Bojo killed someone in the wilderness, successfully tying the score to 4-4. We're really lucky to meet someone with low HP, the male archer said as he looked at the map. His tone was slightly sinister. The female sorcerer was full of disdain. It's all because you and I beat the opponent to low HP, allowing some noob to take advantage of the situation. No wonder he had to team up with us, he wanted to take advantage of us. Just as she was saying this, Bojo led the troops and jumped to the bottom of the defense tower. Successfully destroying the second defense tower on the top lane. Then, she maneuvered her character into the jungle and disappeared again. Other than hiding in the bushes, what else does this noob know? That's enough. The female sorcerer was still commenting. The male archer was still confident. Ignore him, I'm here, there's no need to be afraid. Hence, the two of them started to charge forward. This time, the opponent was alone. It was a 2v1 and the opponent didn't know how to play. The female sorcerer successfully swept the opponent and took a life. Noob, watch out, this is called a game. As she spoke, she took a step forward. A line of words appeared on the screen. Tyrant King has been killed. Killing the Tyrant King in the wilderness would double the team's finances and experience. This was beneficial to the entire team. The one who killed the Tyrant King wasn't anyone else, it was the noob that the female sorcerer was talking about, Bojo. Did Spade Z's FC King come for nothing? Whenever they wanted to clear a dungeon, they would specially choose the difficult hidden bosses. That was why they shocked Zone C time and time again. At this moment, the male archer was still speaking. It's normal for an assassin to kill a Tyrant King. If I was an assassin, would have killed the Beast King by now. Bojo replied calmly, you can give it a try and see how long you can last before being killed by the Beast King. The male archer could tell that she was being sarcastic. His anger rose. What do you mean? Are you trying to say that I'm not a good player and that I'm a noob? Under normal circumstances, no one would reply to his question since they had to be careful. But when the word, yes, appeared on the screen, the male archer wanted to curse. Hee, everyone can see who's the noob. What about you? You aren't even participating in the team battle, what right do you have to criticize others? Don't listen to him, let's go kill the Beast King. There are 4 of us now, it'll be easy. Was that really the case? They walked over. Bojo sent a message to retreat. Unfortunately, only the girl who was playing the tank hesitated for a moment. The rest of them surrounded the wild dominator boss. The Beast King was stronger than the tyrant in terms of attack power and HP, making it harder to attack in the early stages. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the other party had probably gone to the Beast King. As expected, Bojo hurriedly turned invisible and retreated. But it was too late. The female sorcerer and male archer had been eliminated in this wave of team battle. Fortunately, the Beast King hadn't been killed yet. The other party was still fighting. Everyone knew that the Beast King would belong to the one who dealt the last blow. This was what people often referred to as snatching the Beast King. Bojo hid in the bushes, calculating the Beast King's HP. At the crucial moment, a knife flew over. Chapter 929. Everyone knew what the consequences of this slash would be. The last attack was full of explosive power. It directly stole the Dominator boss that the other side had worked so hard to defeat and successfully captured the Wyvern. Damn, is the assassin on the other side using a cheat code? How can you snatch it like this? I've already been killed by him twice. I feel so wronged. Don't be so long-winded. Kill him first. There were 5 Dominator bosses, but none of them had full HP. But there were tanks, long-range shooters, and team control sorcerers, all of them surging towards her. Bojo glanced at the map on her phone but didn't turn back. The reason was simple. There were two people on the way back. One was a tank, and the other was a mage. Going back was basically suicide. He moved sideways towards the opponent's wilderness, making use of the bushes and walls in the wilderness to perfectly avoid the long-range cannons fired by the archer. This kid is too bold. Stop him, we must stop this assassin. However, Bojio wasn't going to let them catch her so easily. When she escaped, she didn't forget to throw a flying dagger at them. Two people were sent flying in a row, and both of them were slowed down by her. He was about to escape. The young man raised his hand, and the towel he was using to dry his hair accidentally covered the young man's eyes. Bojio's first reaction was that it was over. As expected, the resurrected teammates didn't give her any support. They were separated by a wall. One of them was low on HP, while the other was half HP. Both of them had used their ultimate moves on her. In other words, if their archers and mages attacked together, their opponents would be helpless. But no one cooperated. No one even tried to save her. When Bojio sat up, the character on her phone had already revived in the city center. The female mage was still unhappy. Everyone's back. Why did you rush in alone? You'll be surrounded. Li Shui, he stole the Dominator boss. Did you only see him being surrounded? Did you not see him steal the boss? The tank girl was really angry this time. You're the one who used your skills the wrong way, not him. The sorceress paused for a moment, then said in an indifferent tone, So, Qing, you still think I'm wrong? Then let him fight on his own. Let's see how many times he'll be surrounded and killed. What the sorceress didn't expect was that when she said those words, Kiran's voice suddenly rang out. Bojio really went alone. At the very least, there were wyverns at the front and troops at the back. It was equivalent to having a tank to help her resist the tower. The defense tower at the bottom lane had been turned into an empty shell by Bojio. The male archer was still in the middle lane. You don't want to join us and still insist on taking the wrong path. I know, the female magus snorted coldly. Looking at the map, the 5 people on the opposite side were all heading towards the pit. He added, they're basically looking for death, alright? No, something's wrong. Instead, someone from the opposing side reacted. It was because he usually watched the pro scene, but now he only paid attention to one thing. That was, the income of this assassin was more than double of theirs. In other words, with the same game character, the opponent's attack power would be much higher than theirs. Don't go. Before he could finish his sentence, the game's music blared. K.O., 1 kill. Look, he's dead. The female magus shrugged. And you still say you're not a scammer. But as soon as she finished speaking, her expression changed. That was because the second announcement sounded in the game. Double kill. Double kill? What did that mean? The person who had died wasn't the pit, but the opponent? That wasn't all, the pit had killed 2 of their players in one go, even when he was surrounded by 5 people. The male archer was calm. It's just a double kill, he won't be able to escape anymore. But his luck isn't too bad. The male archer wanted to give the female magus and himself a way out, attributing everything to luck. But Bojio wasn't going to give them the chance to argue. She retreated, hiding behind the bushes. The opponent was still shouting, F***ck, he actually dodged it again. Where's the tank? It can enlarge, squat him. The one who said this was the only DPS on the other side. He didn't know that the moment he finished speaking, the assassin who had been running to the right shook. After changing his body shape, he stuck close to Bojio and swept her across. All of a sudden, the third in-game sound effect rang out. 3 kill. But that wasn't the end. Bojio tilted her body, the flying knife piercing through, reducing the speed. The opponent's assassin couldn't even walk, much less escape. With a swoosh, the sword landed. 4 kill. This time, the sound effect was different. Be it the other party or the hairdresser, both of them were dumbfounded. The Thornhead youngster's jaw dropped. That works too. MMH, Bojio replied, her fingers twirling. The thorn-head youngster reminded her, aren't you leaving? He's in critical condition. The opponent was a tank, he couldn't move. I won't leave with a dragon. Bojio's phone switched back and forth, she seemed to be changing equipment. The image that flashed by made the thorn-head youngster dizzy. The thorn-head youngster rubbed his temples. Why are you still fighting when he's in critical condition? He's a tank. He doesn't have any big moves left, Bojio replied faintly. The thorn-head youngster was confused. Seriously? How could she remember that? How could she let him have a good time? Sometimes, you won't die if you don't escape, Bojio said, charging forward with her sword. She swept across, catching the opponent off guard. The tank didn't have time to react and was already in critical condition. At first, he thought it was over. After all, the city center was behind him. As long as he returned to the city, he would be back to full HP. Unexpectedly, at the moment when he walked back to the city, a flying knife directly stabbed at him. K.O. 5 consecutive kills. The thorn-head youngster took a deep breath when he saw this. The female sorcerer and male archer froze on the spot. After all, everyone could hear the sound effect in the game. It was a 1v5 and he was surrounded on the high ground, but he still managed to kill 5 consecutive kills. This time, they couldn't say anything about the opponent relying on luck. The atmosphere was awkward. Everything in front of them, including the tall figure standing in the middle of the screen and the shattered city, was a harsh slap to their faces. They won the match. They didn't just win. Everyone felt as though they had been put on a show by the assassin in black. Especially the last 5 consecutive kills on the high ground. The opponent couldn't help but ask Bojio to be his disciple. Bojio didn't agree, returning the phone to its original owner. She looked at herself in the mirror, deep in thought. It wasn't an easy match. There were even a few times when she had to escape to save her life. She wasn't like this when she was in a professional match, because no matter where she appeared, the team would rush to support her. She didn't need to escape, she just needed to cut in quickly and accurately. It was especially so when she was in a team with the Almighty. Bojio thought about it. She roughly understood what Fomi meant when he said, "You still need to train more." When playing hero, one person could indeed carry the entire field, but real esports wasn't a single-player game. It was to be like the Almighty, who could carry the entire field when he was alone and could coordinate well in a team battle. It seemed like before the National League. It was time to change what she lacked the most. On the other side, the silver-haired youngster stood up with a smile. On the other side, the thorn-head youngster pondered for a moment before opening the WeChat discussion group. With a flushed face, he said, "I'm sorry, I wasn't the one who played the previous round. I'm not good as an assassin, but I can play as a tank. Even if it's a pit, I can block in front of you and give you time to escape. What I mean is, are you still willing to play with me?" In reality, if the thorn-head youngster hadn't said it, no one would have known he had found someone else to play for him. After all, everyone was still immersed in the shocking quintuple kill just now. But to the thorn-head youngster, he didn't have a single good point. He wasn't good at his studies, and even though he looked good, he wasn't smart. He liked to be the boss, and even in games, he couldn't beat the boss of number 1 middle school. The latter was a huge blow to him. You guys wouldn't understand the hatred between number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school. Who was better? It was a matter of pride. In comparison, he wasn't as good-looking as the youngster. After all, pretty boys were trending nowadays. A tough guy like him wasn't cute. But he knew there was something he had to follow. Things should be as they were. He wanted to act cool. Hence, when he saw the youngster, he wanted to win. But at that time, he had thought it through. If he won, he would tell the youngster the truth. Even if he was a bastard, he wouldn't lie to the girl he liked. That was also the reason why Bojio felt this Chinibu was worth befriending. The WeChat discussion group went silent for a second. The next second, the sorcerer girl, Li Shui's voice popped out. I knew it. How can a pit like you play so well? Playing games requires intelligence. Li Shui, don't make things difficult for the students from number 2 middle school. It's not easy to find someone to play for him. It was obvious that the person who said this was the male archer. The thorn-head youngster clenched his fists. Bo Jiu glanced over. This is the second time you have to control your temper. I can't help it, they are friends. When the thorn-head youngster lowered his head, he looked like a large dog. Otherwise, with my temper, do you think I wouldn't beat them up? Hee, it's an insult to my reputation as the boss of number 2 middle school. Bo Jiu arched a brow but didn't reply. Just then, a voice came from the other side. Where are you now? Outside. The thorn-head youngster's voice was still muffled. Come to my house. The girl's voice was cold, but the words she said were warm. Who wants you to be good at games? Hurry up and study with me. You don't want to go to university anymore, do you? The thorn-head youngster's eyes lit up. I'm going over now. The girl was obviously trying to get back at the thorn-head youngster. Some people are indeed smart, but remember, I like people like you who are a little dumb and a little pit. MMH. The thorn-head youngster nodded continuously. Bo Jiu seemed to be able to see a certain Chinibu's ears pricking up. Seriously. Did his lackeys from number 2 middle school know about him? But, from your tone, you two seem to know each other. We live in the same district, but we weren't familiar with each other in the past. We only got to know each other after a while. With that, the thorn-head youngster turned and patted Bo Jiu's shoulder. I heard that you like young Master Qin to the point of insanity. But you still haven't moved his heart, right? Bo Jiu. Who did you hear that from? Is that how you use the adjective crazy? To be honest, I used to despise people like you. What's that called again? Oh right, gay. The thorn-head youngster frowned. But you are different, you aren't a sissy at all. As the boss of No. 2 middle school, I shouldn't be talking to you about this since destroying you has always been our school's plan. But this time, it's different. I feel that there's something wrong with number 1 middle school recently. Don't always chase after your almighty and forget your mission as the boss of number 1 middle school. Bo Jiu. What did he mean by mission as the boss of number 1 middle school? This was a conversation between a Chinibu. What problem? Bo Jiu asked casually. The thorn-head youngster caressed his chin. Someone wants to buy the trending searches. It's the girl who played with us just now. Buy the trending searches? Bo Jiu frowned. Why would a high school student want to buy the trending searches? The thorn-head youngster shrugged. I don't know the details, but I know who her target is. It's a web novelist who seems to be depressed. Bo Jiu glanced up. Why are you telling me this? Aren't you any sports idol? The thorn-head youngster pouted. An idol has to display his strength and let the people who like you learn from him. Someone should believe your words. My girlfriend likes that web novelist quite a bit. Bo Jiu arched a brow. Your girlfriend? The girl who played with Tank just now. Isn't she pretty? The thorn-head youngster asked shyly. Bo Jiu replied lazily, she just asked you to go home for tuition. How did she become your girlfriend? Didn't you hear her say she likes me? The thorn-head youngster shook his head. Forget it. Someone like you who doesn't get confessed to often wouldn't understand. Bo Jiu, honestly, this isn't the only problem in number 1 middle school. As the top student in the school, you probably don't realize it. Anyway, it's quite troublesome. The thorn-head youngster revealed another piece of information. Previously, I saw someone from number 1 middle school with the local tyrant. He seems to be a mistress and is helping the other party to do something. The local tyrant seems to be doing a big business recently. In short, it's very profitable. But the dangerous thing is, when I went to socialize with my old man, I heard him say that as long as he took down the school, he would earn more than that. Speaking of which, aren't the students from number 1 middle school all dumb geese who only know how to study? Why is it more chaotic than number 2 middle school? It didn't seem to be important, but it revealed a lot of information. Bojo memorized everything without batting an eyelid. She stuffed her hands into her pockets and glanced at the clock hanging on the wall. I have something on, I have to go. All right, the thorn-head youngster replied. When I go to socialize again, I'll help you look after the students from number 1 middle school. I don't want you to die before I can even fight with you, benefactor. After Bojo left, someone in the WeChat group asked, who was the assassin just now? I recorded it and posted it online. Someone said that the assassin was so cool, can you tell me who it was? The thorn-head youngster thought for a moment before typing an ID. Spade Z. In an instant, the WeChat group exploded. Spade Z? Oh my god. It's actually My Highness Joe. Is he still there? Is he still there? I want to confess. No wonder he got the first kill in the first match, it's indeed my big Spade style. He even stole the dragon, he's so shameless, so cool. He must be really depressed. That's why when Big Spade is around, don't fight the dragon, it'll ruin your life. Li Shui just said that Big Spade is a scammer. Li Shui, who was called out, paused for a moment, then said, it's just a game. Of course, professional players play better than us normal players. To be honest, I don't know all of these esports players, but I don't really like them. It's not that I'm being biased, but I just feel that these people are leading the students astray. Instead of studying, they're always playing games. It's not good to be addicted to games. The thorn-head youngster didn't get angry at all. After hearing her words, he turned on the voice chat. Student Li Shui, think about it before you speak. Who is the number 1 in number 1 middle school? It's the person who doesn't study properly. Spade Z is an esports player, but in your words, he's addicted to games. How dare you say he's not biased? If you think games aren't good, you don't have to play because it only shows the bad side. On the other hand, there are people who work hard and never give up. Even if they score 0, they can still shine in the esports arena. If you don't understand this logic, shut up. Qing, this is the person you said you like? That's enough, how can you be so rude? Li Shui sneered. Qing also turned on the voice chat, her tone unhurried. If speaking the truth is rude, then we can't do anything about it. Li Shui paused, she didn't expect the other party to put her in such a difficult position. She threw down a sentence. You really learn from the people you interact with. Then she went offline. She had more important things to do, there was no need to argue with them. Just like that, the entire incident seemed to have calmed down, but in fact, the darkness was just starting to descend. It was written in a book that the human heart was scarier than ghosts. And no one could predict the human heart. Time trickled by. At the largest garden-style hotel in Jiang City, there was a gathering for businesswomen. For such an annual gathering, the guests were all successful and reputable women in Rivertown. They weren't just rich, they had to be classy. Hence, as long as one was from Rivertown, he or she would want to attend such a gathering. The place was filled with fresh flowers, all wooden decorations. There was a piano in the middle, a champagne tower placed high, and on the wooden table covered with a white tablecloth, besides candles, there were all sorts of fruits. Not far away, there was a chef making pastries and some barbecued meat. This meant that people could order whatever they wanted to eat on the spot. In the past, He Honghua didn't have the right to attend this gathering. It wasn't because she wasn't rich enough, but because the other party invited Su Mei. This time, He Honghua attended because she was clear that she had to do something at the right time. Her Jiu was already a professional sports player. She was bound to become more and more popular in the future, to the point that almost all the students were talking about her. Because of this, she couldn't step back. She didn't want people to say, "Look, that's her." Her mother came from the countryside, and she's a shrew who can't even write. When people talked about Jiu, they would say, "Look at that person." Humans were just that weird. In the past, He Honghua never cared about what others said about her. But once her child was involved, everything changed. It didn't matter what her family background was. But she didn't want such things to become a burden to her Jiu. He Honghua had always been a carefree person. This time, she put on makeup for the first time. She even went to find a stylist just to look presentable. She had dressed up in the past, but no matter how she dressed up, she couldn't shake off the title of shrew in such a place. He Honghua was still hesitating, wondering if she should go in. A tall and slender figure walked over from her left, reaching out to place a hand on her shoulder. The youngster had a clean and faint smile. "Mom, why aren't you going in? Why are you standing here?" Bo Jiu was dressed in a well-ironed white suit with a bow on her collar. Her lips were lifted, her bright eyes and white teeth making her look like a prince. There weren't many people who could resist a suit of this color, but Bo Jiu seemed to be born with a demonic aura. Even though it was white, she could still exude a devilish aura. It was very attractive. Even He Honghua felt that her Jiu was so handsome that it made her blush. Her round face broke into a smile, filled with delight. Bo Jiu arched a brow, bending her arm into an arc. "Let's go, Madam He, enter." He Honghua had never been invited like this before. She paused for a moment, then clumsily moved her arm forward. "Madam He, be more confident. Trust me, your Jiu is so handsome, it will definitely give you extra points." Bo Jiu's face didn't blush when she said this, her heart wasn't racing. Instead, there was a smile on her beautiful face. She was really narcissistic. But because of this sentence, He Honghua's heart wasn't as chaotic and uneasy as when she had first arrived. Yes, be more confident. She was here to eat. Bo Jiu glanced over as she walked, observing He Honghua's side profile. When she saw the smile, her lips lifted. He Honghua still had to ask, "What did you do today? I didn't see you at the club, your teammates said you weren't training today." Bo Jiu wasn't going to tell He Honghua about defusing the bomb. She reached out and tugged her suit, smiling devilishly. "I went to buy this and even got a haircut. I'm going to accompany Madam He to the banquet, how can I not bring my own equipment to carry the crowd?" He Honghua laughed. "You child." The moment they entered, they caught everyone's attention. Chapter 930. The male archer from before was also at the banquet. Compared to Bo Jiu's suit, he was dressed with more thought. He was wearing a British tuxedo that was tailored well, making him look tall and straight. The male archer wasn't anyone else, he was the celebrity son that Guo Rong had mocked when she heard that He Honghua was attending the banquet, Yi Sihua. When he found out that movie Queenan was coming, he felt that his chance had arrived. They were in the same industry after all, hence, he had received some news. Recently, movie Queenan had secured a huge role overseas and the director was internationally renowned. He was currently searching for a mysterious Asian youngster. If he received movie Queen Anne's recommendation, he would be able to act in the film. Wouldn't his net worth be that of a C-list celebrity? Those that weren't in the industry probably wouldn't know. As long as he acted in a huge film overseas, he would receive a steady stream of domestic resources. Other than that, he would be classified as an actor. Hence, to Yi Sihua, today was truly a ladder for him to climb up. As for his acting skills, who cared? This was an era where looks mattered. As long as his acting skills were good, there wouldn't be a problem. There were people in the industry who wanted him to study. What a joke, he had to squeeze time for his classes because he was worried that the paparazzi would say that his acting had affected his studies. He had to be a role model so he didn't have the time to study. Anyway, he could just use a stunt double for some scenes. As long as he had connections, he wouldn't have to worry about not being popular. Right now was the best time for him to grab hold of this opportunity. In terms of looks, he was confident that no one could beat him. But Yi Sihua tightened his grip on his wine glass when his gaze was stolen. The people that had been chatting with him paused, their gazes landing on the person who had stolen his limelight today. Yi Sihua was still in the group chat, obviously aware that the person who had stolen his limelight was Spadesy. But they didn't know that he was the shooter. Regardless of whether he was playing or interacting with others, he would never reveal his real identity. At most, he would say that he was from number 1 middle school. After all, he was a celebrity. But he had never experienced such a feeling. It was fine that he had been outshone in the game. What right did this upstart from the countryside have to come here and steal his limelight? Guo Rong didn't like He Honghua and the others either. In fact, this was not surprising. Some of the ladies who often socialized knew that Guo Rong and Su Mei were very close. Back then, she had looked down on He Honghua and even said that Guo Rong could not understand why that plain and fat country girl was so persistent. Could it be that Guo Rong could not see what she and Su Mei had sensed before? If she knew what was good for her, she would quickly give up. She had no self-awareness at all. Hence, when Bojiu and He Honghua started walking, her first reaction was to pout. However, people like them would never show their true thoughts on their faces. This was the elegance they flaunted. This was also the reason why Guo Rong felt that she was superior to others. She looked down on people like He Honghua who came from the countryside and wanted to join them no matter what their status was. Not to mention that son of hers. Not only was she a love-struck fool, she even dared to attack his own father. Guo Rong had also heard Su Mei talk about this person. Other than being a professionally sports player, there was nothing good about him. But even though esports sounded nicer, it was just a game. He was really a person at the bottom of the social hierarchy, trying to find an opportunity to bite others. Guo Rong retracted her gaze from the two of them, holding on to her wine glass with a smile. She couldn't even be bothered to look at them. Come, Sihua, follow your Aunt Yang Huan more, it will be easier for her to introduce you later. I remember that you have interacted with Movie Queenan before, right? Guo Rong was obviously trying to raise her son's social status. Yi Sihua had indeed met Movie Queenan, but he had been seated below the stage, watching the goddess of the film and television industry receive her award. But that didn't stop him from using this incident to create hype. We met when we were overseas. Oh. As the organizer of the banquet, Yang Huan arched a brow and smiled. Sihua, you are quite impressive. Yi Sihua replied humbly, it's nothing much, it was just a chance to attend an event and learn from a senior. You're doing quite well now. A lot of people are asking me how I met you when they saw our photo. You'll definitely become famous in the future. Yang Huan smiled and said, don't forget to support your Auntie Yang. Yi Sihua was confident. I definitely won't forget. But even so, he didn't manage to attract the attention he wanted. Because the ladies beside him weren't talking about him, but the nouveau riche who wasn't even fit to carry his shoes. That's him, right? Spadesy? I don't know why my daughter likes him so much. My daughter isn't interested in anything other than solving questions. This time, she actually said she wanted to surpass the school hunk in her school to be a qualified fan. What do you think she's talking about? My son is even more interesting. He recently cut his hair and said he wanted to join the military. He said he couldn't even beat a gigolo in his life, it was too humiliating. Now that he joined the military, it fulfilled our wishes. In the past, he always thought he was the best in the world and was extremely arrogant. But to be able to beat my son down, he is indeed impressive. It's good to have such a child. He seems rather sensible, unlike what Su Mei said in the past. There were plenty of whispers in the banquet. But Yi Sihua wanted to share all the whispers with him. Both mother and son had the same thought. Guo Rong didn't feel comfortable either. After all, in all the events she had attended, as long as her son was around, others would always be envious of her. Today's banquet wasn't going according to her expectations. Guo Rong narrowed her eyes. As the invited party, she had to greet the host. It was basic etiquette. Hence, the moment Bojiu entered, she brought He Honghua towards Yang Huan. If it had been He Honghua herself, she wouldn't have been confident. But with Bojiu around, things were different. He Honghua greeted Yang Huan naturally. To Yang Huan, maintaining harmony in social settings was basic etiquette. Even if He Honghua wasn't invited, it didn't make a difference to her. She knew how to make polite small talk. In the past, Guo Rong could have done the same. But now, she couldn't do it. She wasn't someone who deserved to attend such banquets. How could she bring up the tempo? Boss it's been a while. Guo Rong smiled and said, your son is becoming more and more outstanding. I think our situation is quite similar. We only have one son in our family. However, Sihua has always been sensible and humble. He has never caused any trouble outside. Even though he is famous now, he has not become arrogant. As for your son. She paused, frowning before continuing, the negative news hasn't stopped. Actually, as parents, we have to consider everything for our child. It's good to be famous, but if he isn't, he would be rash and easily get into trouble. It's better for our family to keep an eye on him. It's more important for him to cultivate both internally and externally. I remember your son wasn't used to such occasions. How is he now? He should have learned how to drink red wine, right? Of course, she still remembered Guo Rong. But she didn't have a deep impression of her son. The reason Guo Rong mentioned how to drink red wine was to mock the first time she had attended a gathering with Su Mei. When others had clinked glasses with her, she had gulped down large mouthfuls. She hadn't been aware of this aspect. At that time, the original body had treated Su Mei as a good person. She hadn't known that Su Mei had brought her out just to embarrass her in public. And Guo Rong had been one of the participants. He Honghua understood what Guo Rong was implying. Her gaze dimmed. She told herself not to be rash. If she was rash, she would fall into the other party's trap. It was better to tolerate it. If she lost her temper, it wouldn't be worth it for her Jiu to be criticized for her lack of upbringing. According to Bo Jiu's personality, such words would go in one ear and out the other. She would just ignore it. But today, He Honghua was here. In this world, there would always be such a person. You couldn't allow her to suffer. To Bo Jiu, He Honghua was such an existence. I've been doing some research on red wine recently. Bo Jiu stuffed a hand into her pants, a devilish smile on her face. Thank you for your concern, Boss Gua. In Guo Rong's memory, the youngster was still a weak and useless nouveau riche. Now that she heard the youngster's words, she stilled for a moment before breaking into a smile. It's good that you know. I would like to get Sihua to teach you. Both of you are around the same age. Even though there are differences in some aspects, it should be easier for you to communicate. Of course, other than gaming, you don't do anything else. Unlike our Sihua, he has to study every day besides reading scripts. Bo Jiu lifted her lips. Boss Gua, why do you think I don't do anything else? Aren't you esports players just gaming? There wasn't anything wrong with Guo Rong's words and actions, but everyone could hear the disdain in them. Bo Jiu looked at her, her voice calm. I think Boss Gua has some misunderstandings about our profession. We don't just play games. A professional esports player has to be online for at least 8 hours a day. 4 of those hours are for basic training, reflexes, hand speed, positioning, as well as the coordination between the team members. They have to be practiced repeatedly. Also, Boss Gua, I believe that respecting people from all walks of life is the foundation of being a boss. What do you think, Boss Gua? Guo Rong was at a loss for words. She had never expected this little country bumpkin to become someone she couldn't fight back against. She had led her into the gutter without a word. There were many people present and they had started their careers in various industries. Of course, she knew what mistake she had made. Yang Huan didn't want anything unpleasant to happen during the banquet since Mizan was coming later. So, when she saw any signs of trouble, she immediately said, kids these days are more thoughtful than we were back then. Director Gua doesn't mean that. Come, let's have a toast. Let's keep our words in the wine. Yang Huan wasn't being fair, but regardless, Guo Rong was someone she interacted with regularly. He Honghua was an outsider after all. Inviting her to the banquet was just to make up the numbers. Between the two, she would definitely lean towards Guorong. I've felt like something was missing since just now. Yang Huan glanced towards Yi Sihua. I haven't chosen the music yet. Sihua, why don't you play a song for us? Actually, the way they treated each other was equivalent to leaving He Honghua and Bo Jiao in the cold. Bo Jiao had never attended such events with He Honghua before. But when she saw that He Honghua was used to it, the warmth in her eyes dissipated. How many times had she been ostracized for it to become a habit? She knew how much effort He Honghua had put into this banquet. Perhaps, she didn't care. But even if she didn't care, she shouldn't be in such a state. It didn't matter if she didn't attend such a banquet. Bo Jiao was about to speak when a familiar voice came from beside her. A familiar voice came from beside him. Auntie Yang suggested it, so it should be possible. But I heard young Master Fu's words just now, and it seems to be very impressive. Why don't I play a part for young Master Fu? I don't need to play any famous songs, just basic piano basics. Young Master Fu should know, right? Bo Jiao glanced up towards Yi Sihua, arching a brow. Was this the male archer from earlier? Yi Sihua wasn't aware that she was good at disguising herself and was extremely sensitive to voices. Moreover, Yi Sihua's tone was filled with disdain. Naturally, she could tell who he was. Or do you mean that young Master Fu doesn't even know the basics? Yi Sihua continued, clearly not giving her a way out. Even though he hadn't interacted with this useless person, he knew a little about him. He didn't even know how to touch a piano, much less play it. How dare he be so arrogant in the game and steal his limelight? He was going to let him have a taste of the consequences in real life. Even though they had a piano at home, He Honghua had never heard her Jiao play it before. She had always assumed it was just a decoration. After all, her Jiao liked to show off. Yi Sihua was doing it on purpose to embarrass her Jiao. He Honghua clenched her fists, wanting to say something. Bo Jiao was faster than her. Should I play first or you? He Honghua paused, glancing up instinctively, her eyes filled with worry. Yi Sihua chuckled. You can go first. I'm afraid you won't have the mood to play after I start since I'm a professional. The mockery in his words was obvious, he was clearly trying to belittle her. Oh. So you're a professional? Bo Jiao walked forward casually, standing tall beside the piano. She glanced up, her gaze devilish. If an amateur like me doesn't play well, things will get awkward. Yi Sihua smirked. Let's talk about that after you finish playing. This useless person was really shameless, playing better than him. Did he know where he came from? Bo Jiao remained nonchalant in the face of his mockery. Everyone watched as the silver-haired youngster in a suit sat at the brightest spot. Chapter 931. There was a sudden gasp from the crowd. Both Bo Jiao and the mocking Yi Sihua turned towards the source of the sound. A woman walked in from the door. She seemed to be the beloved child of God. Whether it was her face or temperament, she was perfect. Few people could wear this kind of oriental red color with a noble effect, but when it was on her, it was as if nothing was a problem. That kind of fiery red color set off her snow-white skin, only making people feel that there was a kind of indescribable lazy beauty. That was not all, because there was another person standing beside her. He was dressed in a black suit, but it gave him the aura of a young master of a warlord. His arms were half bent, and his slender legs were walking forward. His tall nose bridge and thin lips were just perfect, sexy and noble at the same time. Who else could it be other than the ravishing young Master Qin of Jiang City? The woman in his arms was Movie Queenan, whom Yang Huan had been looking forward to meeting for a long time. In reality, not many people knew that Movie Queenan and Qin Mo were mother and son. Mainly because no one knew about Movie Queenan's background other than acting. Her appearance this time. Many were shocked. In terms of age, the two of them didn't seem to be a match. Besides, for young Master Qin to accompany her and intentionally lower her status, she must be a relative of the Qin family. Could movie queen and be one of young Master Qin's cousins? The wrong guess was because movie queen and didn't look like someone in her 40s. Other than Yang Huan, Bo Jiu was the only one who knew the truth. But Bo Jiu was surprised that the Almighty and movie queen would attend the banquet. Based on their personalities, they shouldn't have attended such events. That was indeed the case. Movie Queen Anne's motive for attending the banquet was to make friends with her in-laws. She hadn't expected to meet her son at the entrance. Hence, she had dragged him in. Movie Queen Anne had wanted to introduce her son to Madame He, but the moment she entered, she saw the silver-haired youngster smiling faintly at her from beside the piano. Jiu was here too. In that moment, Movie Queen Anne's eyes lit up. That was the benefit of being beautiful, even her eyes were deep and seductive. Yang Huan also saw Movie Queen Anne's gaze on her. But she assumed that Movie Queen Anne was looking at Yi Sihua, so she walked over with a smile. Sister Anne, you came at the right time. Sihua was just about to play the piano. Guo Rong followed behind Yang Huan. Looking at the beautiful woman in front of her whose age could not be guessed, her mind raced. She didn't know how powerful this person with the surname An was. In her eyes, the other party was just a celebrity who was good at acting. Later, she heard from her son that her identity would be of great help to him. Only then did she change her opinion of this woman. It was a waste to use such an important time to trample on He Honghua and her son. In any case, a country bumpkin would only be a country bumpkin. It was not worth it for them to take it seriously. Therefore, Guo Rong quickly continued Yang Huan's words. Madam An, Sihua told me that you've met once. What he said the most was for me to learn from your elegance as a mother. Now that I've seen you today, I'm still far from it. Movie Queen Anne didn't say anything in response. With her self-restraint, she wouldn't expose a person. But at the same time, she smiled ambiguously and didn't reply. This was to deter those who wanted to get close to her. It was a pity that whenever Guo Rong tried to get close to someone with a motive, she would always ignore the fact that the other party didn't want to talk to her. She smiled and continued, I will get Sihua to prepare now. Madam An is here, I want to play something nice. With that, Guo Rong walked towards the piano. Unbeknownst to her. At this moment, Qin Mo was making eye contact with a certain someone. The gist of it was for her to go over to his side. This time, Bo Jiu understood the Almighty's intentions. She supported her chin with her left hand, her fingertips tapping the piano keys. She still had to play. Qin Mo arched a brow, his gaze sweeping over Yi Sihua, who was standing beside her. His eyes dimmed as though he was asking, who is this? Don't tell me he's the person you confessed to before. Bo Jiu understood his gaze. Almighty, don't bring up my dark history. Besides, how could I confess to someone like him? It was an insult to her taste. He Honghua noticed her Jiu's gaze, but she wasn't sure if she should greet Qin Mo in such an occasion. Yes, in He Honghua's eyes, Qin Mo was just a junior who often visited her house. But from the looks of it, Qin Mo had been much easier to interact with when he was at her house. Now that they were in public, his aura changed. It was an air of nobility that kept strangers away. He Honghua wasn't the type to announce their relationship to the world. Hence, she didn't move. She was still thinking about her Jiu's piano competition with someone. Bo Jiu had the same thought. After the interruption, she tidied herself up and was about to start. But, Madam He, look, Madam An is here. Let's stop this meaningless piano competition for now. Your son should sit somewhere else. Guo Rong smiled politely since she had to be elegant. He Honghua frowned. What was the meaning of this? They were the ones who wanted her Jiu to play the piano. Were they trying to chase her away? Bo Jiu smiled. She didn't move, her posture relaxed and suave. Boss Guo doesn't have the final say. We still have to compete. Hee hee. Guo Rong chuckled lightly, like an elder guiding a junior. Young Master Fu, don't be so serious now. If you really want to compete, I'll get Sihua to teach you another day. Bo Jiu didn't move. Instead, she glanced up, her gaze as dark as the night sky, sending chills down her spine. Guo Rong was stunned by the young man's gaze. Yang Huan hurried over. Madam it's going to be a private gathering and the piano is going to be used. I'm sorry, why don't you get your son to leave first? Yang Huan was the organizer, and since the organizer had said so, it would seem shameless if she continued to sit there. However, this group of people was too much of a bully. They were the ones who had coaxed her Jiu to play the piano. Now, weren't they just playing with her? He Honghua clenched her fists, her face flushing red. Yi Sihua was already standing beside the piano. His arrogant attitude was obvious, he was asking the youngster to give way. But he hadn't expected this. The slender figure walked over and stood in front of him. He stuffed one hand into his trouser pocket, the other on the piano. He was elegant, handsome, and elegant. People like him couldn't compete. Yi Sihua was confident in his looks, but as long as he was around, celebrities like him had to step aside. He had filmed a role in the past, a young master of the warlord era. He was from No. 1 middle school after all. The forum would definitely be flooded with his photo. But very quickly, someone posted a photo of Qin Mo. What's the big deal? I'll show you the young master of the warlord in real life. When Qin Mo had first entered the school, he had been wearing a military uniform and undergoing military training. His upright posture hadn't captured his face, but the image of him holding a bottle of mineral water and wearing military boots had instantly caused the posts related to him to sink. At that time, he had been thankful that Qin Mo wasn't in the entertainment industry. Now that he was facing Qin Mo, Yi Sihua didn't have any temper. Because he knew very well that there was too much of a gap between them. What confused Yi Sihua the most was movie queen Anne's words. "Jiu, you know how to play the piano?" Yi Sihua wasn't the only one whose expression changed. Even Guo Rong turned towards movie queen Anne. "Jiu?" Movie queen Anne actually called this country bumpkin Jiu? Did they know each other? How was that possible? He Honghua was the son of a country bumpkin, how could he know such a noble person? But the scene before them forced them to believe it. Movie queen Anne was behaving like a fangirl, her eyes sparkling. "Hurry up and play a song, I've always wanted to see you sitting in front of the piano. It's just as I imagined, it's perfect." Yang Huan and movie queen Anne could be considered friends, but even if it was her, Ms. Anne wouldn't speak to her in such a tone. What exactly was the relationship between He Honghua's son and Sister Anne? No, what had he done to gain Sister Anne's affection? Bo Jiu had interacted with movie queen Anne a few times and knew that the Almighty's mother had probably portrayed her character. But no matter what, he was still a son who slept with someone else. Bo Jiu was still obedient. What would Goddess Anne like to hear? Sky City. Movie queen Anne seemed to have thought of something and smiled. Mo plays well too, a duet would be perfect. Aren't you going to compete? Let him back you up. In reality, movie queen Anne wanted the two of them to be in the same frame so that Madam he would feel that they were a good match. Besides, the situation had been obvious. Someone was bullying Jiu. What kind of joke was that? She couldn't even bear to make things difficult for the child, how could she allow him to be bullied? During this time, Guo Rong and Yi Sihua's expressions had changed several times. The moment movie queen Anne finished her sentence, the mother and son froze. Yang Huan wanted to say something. "Sister Anne, Huan, regardless of the situation, you have to know how to treat your guests. You did well when you were young, but now that you've grown up, you seem to have forgotten." Movie queen Anne glanced up at her. With just that one glance, Yang Huan's face burned. Everyone present knew that he was going to stop when the time was right. As the host of the banquet, her actions had been overboard. Yang Huan hadn't expected He Honghua's son to know her, Sister Anne, the heir of the biggest financial group. On the other side, Qin Mo was already seated beside her, playing the first sound test. Yi Sihua's face turned pale. He knew he wasn't Qin Mo's match. But taking a step back, it wasn't a bad thing for him. Based on his understanding of the country bumpkin, he wouldn't be able to follow Chin Mo's tune. That way, the country bumpkin would be the one making a fool of himself. With that, Sihua's lips curved upwards. But in the next second, the silver-haired youngster pressed the keys, her fingers gliding over the piano like water. Her hair fell softly behind her ears, her fair neck, her distinct collarbones, every joint flawless. The youngster in the white suit seemed to have been poisoned with every glance. The youngster's tune was ethereal and pleasant, penetrating into one's heart. The scene Sihua was expecting didn't happen. On the contrary, after hearing the sound of the guqin, everyone looked towards the center. The scene in front of him was indeed too beautiful. It was as though all the lights had been drawn out of the ensemble by the two men at the piano. The silver-haired youngster glanced over with a smile. Even the noble Chin Mo seemed to have a liveliness to him. The people present had also listened to all kinds of concerts. This was the first time they had heard such a concert. The coordination between the two did not have the slightest bit of interruption. Their smooth movements reverberated in everyone's ears. Everyone could not help but close their eyes to enjoy it. There was even a professional piano teacher among them. Sihua's face turned paler as more and more people surrounded him. Someone pointed out, Sihua's piano skills aren't as good as his. At that moment, Sihua felt as though he had been slapped in front of everyone. He had mocked her at the start of the concert, but now, he had returned everything. There was a saying that had come true for him. After the youngster was done, he couldn't play anymore. Sihua was aware of the situation. He didn't have the youngster's familiarity with the piano keys and wasn't confident that everyone would be engrossed when he played. The coordination between the two of them was too good. Their tacit understanding was not only flawless, but their faces also made them look like a pair of princes. In reality, this wasn't the first time Bojio had played with the Almighty. But it had been a long time. The Almighty had long forgotten that she knew how to play the piano. From a certain perspective, he was the one who had taught her. Back then, he hadn't liked to play with her. In order to attract his pet's attention, she had done many things. One time, she had messed with his piano. In the end, he had grabbed her hand and pressed it against the piano keys. Which girl doesn't know how to play the piano? From today onwards, learn well and don't play with the English people next door, do you hear me? I don't know which keys are which. Stupid, yes, she had been playing the piano since she was young and the Almighty had taught her step by step. How could she be any worse than Sihua? Another note fell. Chin Mo glanced over, his fingers touching someone's. It was at that moment. He found it strangely familiar. All of a sudden, something seemed to jump into his mind. Who had he ever sat with like this? Chapter 932. The blurry memory seemed to be separated by mist. He looked to be less than 5 years old. He was sitting beside the piano with a person in his arms. The person seemed to be a little younger than him. Her head was moving around and was very disobedient. He was holding the person's fingers and trying to memorize the notes on the piano. Momo, playing the piano is boring. Let's go look for William, his dog is fun to chase. We'll go after we finish. It'll be late by the time we finish, I still have to climb the wall. You'll have curry rice after you finish. You can decide if you want to play with William or stay here to eat curry rice. He heard himself asking the person to make the choice in an aloof manner. The person's head drooped for a second before she lifted it again. I want to eat curry rice, but it's not fun to play the piano all the time. Let's take a break, I'll play Super Mario with you, but tomorrow at this time, you can't go to William's house. You have to come over and learn the piano. Which girl doesn't know how to play the piano? From today onwards, learn well and don't play with the Englishman next door, do you hear me? The last part was his voice. As it was too sudden, a sharp pain shot through his head, causing him to freeze. Even though there weren't any other reactions, his pale and handsome side profile made Bojio realize his discomfort. Bojio glanced over and asked in a low voice, Brother Mo? The pain only lasted for a moment. Qin Mo pressed his long fingers between his brows. Nothing. As soon as he finished speaking, he stood up and straightened his back. For some reason, he felt like rubbing the young man's furry head. Qin Mo did the same. You played well. The sudden approach made Bojiu pause. The warmth on her head was obvious, just like how he had done it when they were young. His breath drifted over and she could feel the warmth. Bojiu lifted her head, her eyes meeting the Almighty's deep gaze. She smiled and pressed her fist against his shoulder. Same to you. The scene was pleasing to the eyes. The atmosphere between the two of them was also unusual. It seemed like a scene from a manga. Almost everyone on the scene was applauding for their ensemble just now. One of the Englishmen held a wine glass in his hand. When he looked at Bojiu, his gaze was indescribable. He even turned to his assistant excitedly and asked, "Go and find out who this Asian boy is." It was a perfect match. Heavens! I feel like I've met the muse from the script. Yes, sir. I'll inquire at once. In fact, they decided to attend this gathering at the last minute because of an invitation from an investor. He didn't expect to receive such an unexpected reward. The assistant knew very well that the director had visited more than a dozen acting schools in China to find a role that matched the script. But he was satisfied with none of them. However, there was a Japanese actor that the director had listed as a candidate. That actor was originally a best actor, but the assistant knew that the director was not very satisfied. Until this youngster appeared, the assistant had never seen the director so excited before. It must be because he was too much in line with the character in his mind. He saw it when and came in just now. The middle-aged Englishman wanted to wait until the banquet was over before letting and be the middleman. The two of them didn't look for anyone, especially the middle-aged Englishman. This time, they had come silently to search for a role. They didn't want anyone to recognize them. With the director's international reputation, the moment the media caught sight of him, it wouldn't matter which country it was from, it would be publicized. This wouldn't be beneficial for them to find the person they needed. The Englishman thought to himself as he glanced at the young man with the devilish smile. He was really too perfect. When the time came, he would dye his hair black and wear the robes of the Republic of China. The mysterious Asian young man sitting in front of the piano would give off a sense of the overlapping of eras. This was the person he had been looking for. He didn't just have an angelic face, he also had a devilish aura. It was a pity that such a person wasn't acting. The Englishman was still excited about his discovery. He didn't know that there were people who had seen his photo and had tried to strike up a conversation with him on several occasions, but none of them had succeeded. It wasn't anyone else, it was Yi Sihua. If he had gone up after the two of them had finished their performance, he would have been asking for humiliation. Hence, before the piano stopped playing, Yi Sihua's men had already left the area. It was because he had retreated from the crowd that he saw the director he wanted to meet. It felt as though he had gone straight from hell to heaven. So what if movie Queen Anne's path was cut off? Now that the director was there, as long as he followed him closely and recommended himself, he would definitely have a chance. Yi Sihua was a man of action. With this thought in mind, he headed in the direction the Englishman had left. On the other side, movie Queen Anne, who was close to the director, had intentionally stood beside He Honghua at the start of the performance. She took advantage of the lingering warmth and smiled. My son used to have high standards, but ever since he met Joe, he changed. Madam, he has taught him well, raising a child like Joe who isn't afraid of my son at all. In the past, there were many people who wanted to be friends with Qin Mo, but they all had ulterior motives. Joe is different. That day, when I saw Qin Mo bring Joe home, I was shocked. After all, my son rarely gets along with anyone and Joe is an exception. But since Joe is so handsome and likable, my son must have been wondering how could there be someone better looking than him. Perhaps that was the reason why they became friends. Now that I think about it, it's amazing. Now that I think about it, it's amazing. He Honghua was shocked when she heard movie Queen Anne's first sentence. She had never expected Movie Queen to be Qin Mo's mother. The more He Honghua listened, the more she felt Movie Queen was different from the other madams she had interacted with. After all, this person was well-mannered, elegant and magnanimous. It wasn't just an act, but every word and action was embedded in her bones, making her feel comfortable to interact with. Movie Queen intentionally made her son sound more pitiful. She sighed deeply. Madam He, don't be fooled by how tall and strong my son is now. He was born prematurely in the past and I didn't take good care of him. With that, the two mothers found a common point of communication. He Honghua immediately said, my Jiao was born prematurely too. He was so wrinkled that I was worried I wouldn't be able to take care of him. I guess so. Movie Queen reached out and held He Honghua's hand. We have to interact more in the future, both of them are troublesome. He Honghua was delighted. That's right. Oh right, Sister He, I've heard about what happened to you. If you need any help, feel free to let me know. Movie Queen was a capable person. She raised Madam He to Sister He without changing her expression. If it had been someone else, He Honghua would definitely be on her guard. Not only did this person look at her with sincerity, she was also beautiful. Most importantly, she didn't have anything on her that she was concerned about. Her warmth made He Honghua feel as though they were old friends at first sight. There wasn't the slightest bit of pretense. In reality, Movie Queen was indeed such a person. I have long wanted to speak to Sister He and have thought of paying you a visit, but I was afraid it would be too abrupt. Today, I heard that Sister He would be attending the banquet, so I specially came over to befriend Sister He. Movie Queen wasn't just expressing her sincerity to He Honghua, she was also saying it for Guorong, who was standing beside them. The way she had asked Jiao to move away from the piano was clearly an act of contempt. Movie Queen didn't feel the need to give her any face. At that moment, it wasn't just Guorong, even Yang Huan's face turned pale after hearing the entire story. It had to be said that Movie Queen's words were a slap to the face, leaving no room for negotiation. On the other hand, He Honghua was the most generous and straightforward. You should have said so earlier. If you had said so earlier, we would have met at home. I don't know anything else, but I know how to cook. When you come to my house, Sister He will cook for you. That would be great. I love to eat, but that's the disadvantage of being an actress. There are so many things I want to eat, but I can't eat them immediately. Movie Queen's tone was coquettish. Take today for example, I just want to eat scrambled eggs with tomatoes. I can't even find that kind of home-cooked taste outside. He Honghua was honest, she immediately replied, that's easy, if you want to eat, come over tomorrow. Can we eat tonight? After Movie Queen asked, she felt that it wasn't polite. I'm disturbing Sister He, I'll eat tomorrow. He Honghua couldn't bear to see the beauty in such a state. It's not disturbing, I just need time to prepare the ingredients. It isn't too late, if you really want to eat, let's go home. I'll have to trouble Sister He then. Movie Queen held He Honghua's hand and smiled. She looked like a helpless little bird. Bo Jiao raised a brow as she walked over. Go home for dinner? What was going on? What was going on? When did her mother and the Almighty's mother become so close? In the time she had been playing the piano, the two of them were already calling each other sisters, completely disregarding her and the Almighty. That was indeed the case. The two of them chatted for a while before deciding on the itinerary. Even though Bo Jiao didn't think it was a good idea to attend such a banquet, she was still a little confused when her mother shoved her into the car so quickly. She glanced sideways at the Almighty, who was sitting beside her. His face was expressionless, handsome and elegant as usual. Was she making a fuss out of nothing? Bo Jiao arched a brow. The four of them sat in Movie Queen's car, a Bentley. Even the chauffeur was an old subordinate of the Qin family. His aura was undoubtedly the most graceful among all the guests. Yang Huan came personally to send them off. In reality, she didn't want Movie Queen to leave, but there was something she had to mention. Mrs. He, I'm sorry for my negligence, I hope you won't take it to heart. He Honghua knew very well why Yang Huan said that. It was all for the sake of her younger sister. Hence, He Honghua didn't reply, merely smiling. People with different principles couldn't make plans together. In the future, she wouldn't attend such banquets and she wouldn't befriend Yang Huan. That was all. It was understandable for Yang Huan to come out since she was acquainted with movie Queenan. But Guo Rong followed, afraid that her son wouldn't have a chance once movie Queenan left. Without a second thought, she pressed the car window. "Madam, I have a private matter to discuss with you. May I know when you are free?" Guo Rong's actions weren't polite at all. However, she didn't realize it herself. She emphasized in a self-centered manner, "It's about my son." "Please make time, madam," and movie Queenan was perplexed by his words. She smiled. "We aren't close and I don't have the obligation to talk to you about your son. Let's go." Guo Rong watched as the Bentley was about to leave, fuming. How can she be like that? Her voice drifted into the car. Even movie Queenan wasn't fond of such people. She always believed that everyone in the world should help her and that it wasn't good if they didn't. As compared to such a two-faced person, her in-law was much better. He spoke his mind and was magnanimous. Even though he was careless, he understood the bigger picture. Movie Queenan felt that there was nothing wrong with her son and Jiu being together. Even if the gender wasn't ideal. But there wasn't anything else to pick on. Her in-law was easy to get along with. Movie Queen Anne's next step was to think of a way to win her over, to ask her about her thoughts and try to get her to accept as soon as possible. Bojo didn't know what Movie Queenan was thinking, but from the looks of it, Movie Queenan was indeed too passionate towards her mother. She had called her sister he so intimately. Was scrambled eggs with tomatoes that attractive? Bojo didn't understand Movie Queen Anne's actions. It didn't mean Chin Mo didn't understand, but it wasn't the time to point it out since there were still people around. Especially the person beside him, who was still thinking of escaping. It wasn't suitable for her to know his intentions. If he forced her even more, it would be troublesome if he allowed her to leave. Chin Mo's method was straightforward. He would settle her down and not allow her to go anywhere. Once she was completely his, he would talk about other things. With that in mind, Chin Mo reached his hand out, grabbing onto her hand without a change in expression. There wasn't any emotion on his face. There wasn't much emotion on his face, but when his long and narrow eyes looked towards Bojo, it was obvious that he was telling her to be quiet. Bojo didn't retract her hand because that would attract the attention of the two parents in front. Chapter 933. He Honghua's attention was completely captured by Movie Queen Anne's words. Indeed, she hadn't noticed the commotion in the back seat. Bojo had assumed that the Almighty would let go after holding her hand. She hadn't expected him to hold her hand for the entire journey. Bojo noticed a white cloth wrapped around his slightly cold fingertip. She remembered how the Almighty had helped her even though he was injured. Her fingers touched his. Chin Mo was aware of his mother's capabilities and knew that the two in front wouldn't have the time to deal with them. He tilted his handsome face, his voice low. "Don't forget what you promised me." Bojo arched a brow. What did she promise? "My hand can't touch water." Chin Mo raised his left hand casually, clearly reminding her. Bojo wanted to say something. He Honghua turned. "What do you want to eat?" "I'll get Xiaodong to prepare the dishes. As long as it's Auntie's cooking, I'm fine with anything." Chin Mo smiled, looking like a noble. Bojo couldn't help grumbling internally. She had never seen anyone as picky as the Almighty. He actually said anything was fine. "I'll get someone to prepare it." He Honghua had been amazed by the perfect youngster in this world. He was so polite, it wasn't surprising that he was good friends with her Jiu. Bojo glanced over, lowering her voice. Bojo glanced over, lowering her voice. "Brother Mo, be careful, there are carrots in my mom's soup." Chin Mo glanced at the mischievous youngster, replying slowly, "Indeed, you should be careful." Bojo laughed. Was the Almighty going to admit he was picky? Auntie. Chin Mo glanced up, smiling lightly. Joe said he doesn't like carrots. Let's not put carrots in the dishes for dinner. Bo Joe, he Honghua stilled, turning towards her. Joe. Why didn't he tell me he doesn't like carrots? I won't put them in the soup this time. No matter what she said, it would only make her seem humble since the Almighty's move was too shameless. Movie Queen and understood her son better. When she heard his words, she glanced at Chin Mo, smiling ambiguously. She was a beauty. She knew better than anyone who didn't eat carrots. Movie Queen and hadn't expected her son to pull such a stunt. If it was in the past, he would definitely not say what he liked or didn't like. In fact, he rarely visited anyone's house. Also, did these two people really think that she could not see their little tricks? He had underestimated her too much. The more Movie Queen and looked at them, the more she liked them. Especially when Joe was depressed, his silver hair would curl up, and the resentment of the beautiful youth. Chin Mo naturally noticed the way the youngster was looking at him. His thin eyelids lifted slightly, his eyes overflowing with a smile. Movie Queen and took in his smile. The last bit of unwillingness in her heart disappeared without a trace. She hadn't seen her son smile in such a long time. Probably only Joe could make him like this. He was no longer as rational, and even a little unreasonable. But this was him with flesh and blood. He hoped that the influence of that incident would disappear like smoke in thin air. With that thought, Movie Queen and pulled He Honghua over to talk about shopping. Regardless of the age or status of a woman, when they talked about clothes, they were always the same. It was as though they would never be tired. Bo Jio waited for the two parents to resume their conversation before glancing in Chin Mo's direction. It was a little resentful. In that instant, Chin Mo was in a daze again. It was as though the youngster in front of him had become very, very small. Then, she sat on his bed, her pair of lotus root-like short legs swinging back and forth. She was not at ease at all. She also looked at him with the same gloomy gaze. She was so noisy that he could not even write a word. Right? Chin Mo frowned at his own imagination. Had he been sleeping too little recently? Even images that didn't exist had appeared. But Chin Mo was curious about how she had looked like when she was young. On the other side, Guorong was upset that she hadn't managed to stop Movie Queenan. She called her son and complained that it isn't nice at all. If she hadn't helped you, I wouldn't have ended up like this. Who knew that she wouldn't even bother to look at me when I was already at the car door? What kind of person is she? Yi Sihua held onto his phone, pushing the crowd aside. Mom, there's no need to look for her. Guess who I saw just now? It's Director William from The Matrix. With him around, there's no need for me to look for her. Guorong was elated. That explains why I didn't see you. I've been looking for a chance to talk to Director William and chased after him. That's all for now, Mom, I'm hanging up. Wait for my good news. Yi Sihua was confident that he would catch Director William's eye. After all, he had an Asian feel to him. Moreover, Director William must be here for the casting. If not, an international director wouldn't be so low profile. He was definitely here to recruit newcomers. With that thought, Yi Sihua's eyes lit up. He pushed the receptionist aside and rushed towards the British man. Director William obviously did not expect someone to suddenly appear in front of him. His blue eyes were filled with astonishment. To show his respect, Yi Sihua bowed before exclaiming in English, Director William, I didn't expect it to be you. I thought I was seeing things. Could you please sign your name for me? I like your movies a lot. The last time I met you was at the film festival, but I don't think you remember me. I seem to be rambling, but you should be able to understand how I feel when I meet my idol. I'm Yi Sihua, an actor. William smiled. Oh, of course, I understand. Yi Sihua's confidence was boosted by his response. Having been educated overseas for so many years, he knew that Europeans love to recommend themselves. This was a common flaw of the Chinese. As early as last year, he had transferred his nationality overseas and understood their way of thinking. Hence, after Yi Sihua expressed his admiration, he didn't hesitate to state his motive. I heard that you are looking for a mysterious male actor from the East. I would like to recommend myself to you. William came to a sudden realization. He rubbed his chin and looked Yi Sihua up and down before shaking his head. You're not bad looking. If it was in the past, I might have considered it. But now, I'm really sorry, I've already found the actor in my heart. If you were at the banquet, you would have seen the silver-haired youngster playing the piano. Be it in terms of looks or aura, he exudes a mysterious aura unique to the East. The smile on his face is devilish but not arrogant. He gives off a humble yet not to be trifled with. He's just like what you Chinese call a noble like a jade. William said the last 4 words in Chinese and his pronunciation was a little strange. But that didn't affect the meaning he was trying to convey. The more Yi Sihua listened, the tighter his fists clenched. It was that disgusting nouveau riche. What mysterious aura unique to the East. That was just an act. Yi Sihua never expected that the role he had fought so hard for would be snatched away by that country bumpkin. No way. He wouldn't allow that to happen. Yi Sihua's lips froze. Director William's words were like a slap to his face. He tried his best to force a smile. Director, you might not know this, but this person isn't an actor and doesn't have any experience in this field. Furthermore, his character, Yi Sihua paused to give Director William some room to imagine. From what he knew, when filming overseas, no matter how good an actor's appearance was, as long as they weren't professional or had poor acting skills, they would be rejected. As expected, when William heard this, he paused. Yi Sihua laughed in his heart and wanted to add more vinegar. Unexpectedly, when William spoke again, he switched to Chinese. Even though he stuttered a little, his meaning was clear. Mr. Yi, are you trying to defame that Asian youngster because you feel indignant about losing to him? Yi Sihua froze and immediately denied it. Of course not. He couldn't let Director William think that way. This was an issue of image. Moreover, Director William was an internationally renowned figure and he had to be magnanimous in front of him. I'm just stating the facts. I'm afraid that Director William doesn't understand the situation and might use the wrong person. After all, this person doesn't have a good reputation. He was originally an esports player, but in order to become famous, he kept provoking his fans. Not only did he create a topic for himself, he even forcefully dragged another almighty to be his CP. If such a person were to join the production team, he would do anything to become famous. From what Mr. E said, you seem to know a lot about this youngster. William's English was much smoother. Since that's the case, why don't you give me all his information? I'll take a closer look. If it's really as Mr. E said, he isn't suitable to act in our movie. Yi Sihua was stunned again. He really didn't want to tell Director William about the nouveau riche. He hoped that Director William would never be able to find him. William glanced at the person in front of him, arching a brow. Mr. E, are you not willing to let me verify it? Yi Sihua had been in the industry for a long time and wasn't stupid. If he were to reject now, not only would his image be ruined in front of Director William, his words wouldn't be credible at all. He might as well be more generous since there was a lot of negative news about Spade Z online. I do know a little about him, Yi Sihua replied. Yi Sihua replied, but I'm not too sure about the details. He is rather famous online. Director Willem, if you are looking for him, you can do a search online. Spade Z is his in-game name and his mother is from the countryside. It's probably because of this that he does things differently and wants to be famous. William's gaze deepened. Thank you, I'll do some research first before making a decision. Director William, you don't have to be so polite, Yi Sihua replied sincerely. Even if the role doesn't belong to me, I don't wish for it to be played by any random person. This time, William didn't reply. At this moment, his assistant returned. Yi Sihua knew he had achieved his goal. It was simple, if he couldn't get the role, that country bumpkin wouldn't be able to either. He was just a country bumpkin, What right did he have to steal his limelight time and time again? Lee Si-hwa sent Director William to the car personally. "I'll think about it." This was what Director William said before he left. Lee Si-hwa waited for the car to drive off before smiling. However, there was still a gush of anger in his chest that could not be released. Who was he to snatch the role from him? Lee Si-hwa kicked the rubbish bin beside him, his eyes dimming. But it was a blessing in disguise. He had cleverly left Director Williams' contact details. Perhaps after Director Williams saw the comments online, he might change his mind and let him take the role. It wasn't impossible. Lee Si-hwa smiled once more, picking up his phone to make a call. "Help me prepare some dirt." "No, this time it isn't someone from the industry, nor that web novel author. I don't think they need it anymore. I managed to win over his fans. That web novel author should be in a bad mood. Don't bother with such a small character. It's an esports player, ID Spade Z. Once it's done, we'll go according to the previous arrangement." "All right." The person on the other end of the line had a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks. Who else could it be other than the tall and slender criminal gang? He hung up, lifting his head to smile at the girl operating the computer. "One of our chess pieces has his eyes on Spade Z, that's right." The girl smiled. "Help him out." The tall and slender man seemed to have other matters to attend to. "The crime squad, don't worry, they won't be able to find anything." The girl tapped her fingers on the keyboard. "The new psychologist has already taken over the investigation with the help of the higher-ups. No one will be able to stop us." "How's your discussion with Rao Rong?" The tall and slender man laughed sarcastically. "He seems a little conflicted, he's still so naive. That's all, he wants to walk his own path. Even if he can't play in the professional league anymore, the mention of his father will calm him down." Chapter 934. Hee Hong-hwa's bright voice came from outside the door. "Joe, hurry down, dinner is ready." Bo-jo adjusted her breathing and smiled. "All right, let's go down." Hee Hong-hwa was still boiling the soup. She went downstairs after receiving a reply. Bo-jo had always been agile. Even after that, her legs weren't as strong as before, but it didn't affect her standing up. But the moment she stood up, the thing that belonged to someone else spread down her fair legs. She couldn't help but pause. Chin Mo saw it as well. The slender figure that had been wearing a shirt bent over, pulling out 2 pieces of tissue from the side and pinching them. After wiping twice, he carried Bo-jo horizontally. "Shower before you go down." This time, Bo-jo didn't reject him. The shower wouldn't take long. Chin Mo rolled up his sleeves and washed her thoroughly before grabbing a towel to wrap her up. His breath drifted over. "Are you cold?" Bo-jo shook her head. Water was still dripping from her silver hair. The Almighty's actions weren't gentle at all. He had probably thrown her under the shower and carried her back. In that instant, she was reminded of the scene where the Almighty had thrown Princess into the bathtub. It was basically the same. She still had to apply the medicine. Bo-jo took the opportunity while the Almighty was buttoning her shirt with one hand to apply the medicine and wrap the bandage. But this indeed proved that the Almighty's hand couldn't touch water. Just now, the Almighty had only had one hand in the water. The shirt and pants from before couldn't be worn anymore. Bo-jo changed into her home clothes. Her hair was half dried, the fluffy hair making her look younger. Chin Mo glanced at her and had another hallucination. He had seen her in this state often in the past, sitting on the bed fluffy and misbehaving after being scooped out of the water. It was a miniature version of her. Chin Mo reminded himself once more that a certain someone wasn't a princess and he couldn't raise her like a pet. Even though he wanted to shrink a certain someone and stuff her into his pocket so that he could bring her wherever he went. But that wasn't realistic. They walked down the stairs one after another. In the end, it was still speed. It took less than half an hour. The dishes were already on the table. 8 home-cooked dishes and a soup looked very delicious. Probably every parent would take out their child's childhood photo album when they were a guest. He Honghua was no exception. Before the age of 2, Jo needed to hide her gender, so she didn't have many photos. Ever since he was 2 years old, he had been getting more and more. He Honghua pointed to one of the photos and said, "This is the photo before she was sent to kindergarten." She was crying miserably. Cute. Movie Queen was undoubtedly fond of children, especially since they were so adorable. She couldn't bear to part with them, forgetting about the dishes on the table. It was He Honghua who noticed the 2 people coming down. She smiled and said, "Sit down and eat. Why is your hair still wet?" The question was directed at Bojio and she replied naturally, "I took a shower." He Honghua did not suspect anything. Movie Queen lifted her lids and glanced in their direction. Her focus was on her son. How reckless. Chin Mo was very calm, and it was hard to tell anything from his side profile. Bojio had a devilish smile on her face. From this, it was hard to tell who was taking advantage of who. Was her son the one at the bottom? Movie Queen felt that it was more likely. She shook her head and passed the photo album over. Look at Joe when he was young. Isn't he cute? She was reminding her son that he needed to take the initiative. Chin Mo really wanted to see what he looked like when he was young. His fingers swept across the photo, looking at the child in the photo album. Strangely, even though he had thought so much about a certain someone when he was young, he didn't feel much when he saw these photos. Chin Mo frowned slightly, his face as elegant as ever. Naturally, the 2 parents began to talk about their childhood stories at the dinner table. Bojio listened as she ate. She wasn't surprised since she knew better than anyone what her puppy had been like when he was young. Basically, he had been a spotless doll, ignoring everyone. People of the same age would often wonder why the child was so much cleaner than them. "It's my fault, I always made him wear brightly colored clothes. When he was young, people often treated him like a little girl," Movie Queen said. Bojio could empathize with him. When she had first met the Almighty, she had thought he was a doll. She had never considered him as a girl. Movie Queen smiled at the youngster. Did Joe encounter anything interesting when he was young? Bojio glanced at the Almighty, who was frowning as he ate. She couldn't help laughing. "I'm different from the Almighty, no one thought I was a girl when I was young." Hearing this, Chin Mo put down his chopsticks and glanced at her casually, as though he was asking her to be taught a lesson. Bojio's smile deepened. When she caught his gaze, she changed the topic. "But when I was young, my best friend looked like a girl. When I first saw him, I thought he was a doll. At that time, I didn't have any concept of suits. I only knew that his hair was tied up in a bun, so he should be a girl. He was fair and pretty, but cold. I couldn't help but want to play with him and bathe with him, but he always despised me. There was once when I climbed over the wall and entered his bathroom. That was when I realized he was a boy. That explains why he would always frown whenever I pounced on him." A small ponytail. Movie Queen's eyes lit up. "I used to love to tie Mo's hair, but he decided to cut it short on his own, so I couldn't do it." With that, Movie Queen paused. "Joe, don't be fooled by Mo's looks now. He was adorable when he was young." "I believe you." Bojio felt that her puppy was adorable, cold and aloof. Movie Queen chatted happily. "It sounds like you have a good relationship with your friend. Are you still in contact?" "I guess so." Bojio took a bite of the food. Movie Queen glanced at her son. "That means they are childhood sweethearts." The youngster didn't deny it, even agreeing readily. When Chin Mo heard the word he lowered his raised hand. He didn't like the term childhood sweethearts because it implied a part of someone's life that he had never been a part of. Besides, they were still in contact. With that in mind, Chin Mo clenched his fists, his chest tightening. They were still in contact? Who could it be? There were only a few people around her. Unknowingly, the first name that popped into Chin Mo's mind was Hoshino. He didn't like such speculation. But everything that had happened in the past was right in front of him. Including her reaction when she saw Hoshino. He had never seen her look at anyone with such a gaze. There was an undetectable reluctance. What was so good about a person, and how important was he to the other party for her to be reluctant to part with him? Chin Mo's gaze dimmed. When he raised his hand again, his aura was much colder. It was as though a bucket of water had been poured over him. Even his breathing was chilly. Was that why she always wanted to escape? Chin Mo's chest tightened, and even the line of his jaw stiffened. Bo Jiao sat beside Chin Mo. When she glanced over, she saw Chin Mo's expression. Was the Almighty in a bad mood again? Why? Was it because of what they had said in the room? That wasn't a suitable time to reply. But even if she could reply, how could she? Once the Almighty found out that she was Z, he would definitely feel that she had lied to him. But she was the one who had been hiding this matter. Even if the day came when everything was revealed, she would still be prepared. What she got in return was his resistance. She was also prepared. She didn't want to see his deep eyes filled with disgust. She would rather reduce the source of his disgust. Bo Jiao paused. She picked up a piece of beef and placed it on the Almighty's plate. She remembered that beef was one of the few foods the Almighty liked. When he saw the piece of meat on the plate, the coldness in Chin Mo's eyes dissipated. He Honghua broke into a smile. Chin Mo likes beef? Eat more. With that, she picked up a piece of meat and placed it over. Bo Jiao watched as the Almighty stilled. His etiquette wasn't bad, it didn't make He Honghua unhappy. But when he lowered his head, he used his chopsticks to push the rest of the beef forward. Then he picked up the piece she had picked up and placed it in his mouth. It was probably because of the slight frown on his face, which made him look extremely serious. His seriousness reminded her of the times when they were young. He would sit on the bed and wipe her hair with a towel. He would even warn her not to barge into his room. Ever since then, she hadn't entered his room. She had stayed on the balcony to watch him write. In the end, she didn't know why, but he was probably afraid that she would destroy all the plants he had been growing. He had opened the window to let her in, saying that he would only keep her for one night. That day, Bo Jiao had washed herself especially clean, afraid that her puppy would dislike her again. Fortunately, her puppy had lifted the blanket coldly and told her to lie still. It was difficult for her to stay still. But her puppy's voice had been pleasant. He had opened his fairy tale book and read her a bedtime story. Sometimes, he would reach out and stroke her hair. He had told her seriously that as long as she didn't play with William, he would read her stories every day and let her sleep on his bed. Between William and her pet, she would definitely choose her pet. Back then, he hadn't allowed her to do many things. That included eating potato chips on his bed. But after listening to his stories, she would feel hungry. He would sweep her a cold glance before heading downstairs to bring food up, just like a little prince. At that time, he had already cut his hair short and was wearing cotton pajamas. His features were still prettier than hers and his body was soft. Indeed, she couldn't judge a person based on their childhood. Bo Jiao would never have expected that her puppy, who had always been softer than her, would have such sharp edges. Which part hadn't changed? It was those eyes. Beneath his thin eyelids was a pair of deep and narrow phoenix eyes. Ever since he was young, he had been different from others. Nice to look at? A familiar voice asked. Bo Jiao arched a brow. MMH? You've been looking at me since a while ago. Chin Mo took the chance when He Honghua went to scoop the soup, turning to press a cold breath into her ear. What are you thinking about? Haven't you slept enough? Bo Jiao was thick-skinned. The best way to deal with someone as scheming as the Almighty was to remain silent. But the next question made her pause. The Almighty asked, "Is this childhood sweetheart the scheming boy you told me about?" Scheming boy? Bo Jiao couldn't help wanting to laugh. But in order not to let the Almighty know, she nodded seriously. Qin Mo watched her, his gaze deep. Stay away from him in the future. Bojiu laughed so hard her shoulders were shaking. So the grown Almighty was so hostile towards her when she was young. Qin Mo couldn't understand why she was laughing. In the end, the dinner ended. He didn't get a clear answer. Qin Mo's aura was much colder than before. But no matter how bad his mood was, Qin Mo wouldn't show it in front of He Honghua. Movie Queenan was the best. Even Chen Xiaodong was impressed. After all, he had never seen Madame become friends with anyone in such a short period of time. Movie Queenan was the first. Moreover, they seemed to be getting along well with each other. They didn't even notice the change in time. This time, Movie Queenan came back not only for her son but also because there was a role that suited Jiu. She wanted to try persuading him to see if he would agree. But it was obvious that today wasn't a good time. With her son around, she wouldn't be able to get the role. After dinner, Movie Queenan stood up with a bright smile. It's late, Mo and I will be heading back first. Sister He, let's meet another day. We can watch their competition together. No problem, He Honghua agreed readily. When they left, everyone was sending Movie Queenan off. I have something to discuss with Jiu in private. You can head back first. He led Bojiu to a fork in the road. There would always be a fork in the villa district. For places with good greenery like this, there would be a street lamp installed in the area with lush leaves. The afterglow of the lamp shone on Qin Mo's face, a mesmerizing handsomeness. Bojiu couldn't help calling him a demon. Chapter 935. What day was it? Bojiu was confused. It shouldn't be the Almighty's birthday. Since it wasn't his birthday, what other day could it be? Qin Mo glanced at the confusion in her eyes. He frowned and said coldly, confession. What confession? Bojiu was confused by the hint. That handsome, mixed-race face inched closer to her, bringing with it an aura that made her restless. It's been 30 days since I confessed to you. The 30th day of his confession? Bojiu stilled. She hadn't expected the Almighty to remember such a day. It wasn't easy to reply. But she couldn't ignore it. Time flies. Back then, Brother Mo, you were really. I was afraid you would turn gay. Bojiu smiled mischievously. She had the upper hand when she had first met the Almighty. Now, she couldn't tease him even if she wanted to. Qin Mo watched her beautiful eyes, speaking leisurely, even if I turned gay, you were the one who did it. Don't change the topic. I definitely didn't change the topic. Bojiu felt that this position was too dangerous. If she wasn't careful, the Almighty might take advantage of her. Hence, she straightened herself. This time, the Almighty wouldn't do anything to her. There were still parents peeking over from time to time. The Almighty wasn't someone who didn't know his limits. Qin Mo was indeed someone who knew his limits. But, he swept a glance at the fox-like youngster, his tone calm. When are you going to give me a status? Do you want to sleep for free? Bojiu choked on his words. Give her a status? Sleep for free, I thought you would remember or at least give me something. I didn't expect, suddenly, the voice beside her seemed to have sunk. Even the person standing there seemed to be an indescribable loneliness. For some reason, Bojiu recalled movie Queen Anne's words. Ever since they were young, the Almighty rarely received gifts. He wouldn't even look at the gifts at his birthday banquets. She had assumed that someone like the Almighty would be likable. For example, she liked him. Back then, she had even given him a gift. But in reality, after they had separated, she wasn't sure how he had grown up. Movie Queenan said that he had a cold personality. Even if it was his birthday, he wasn't interested in the gifts from his elders. It was probably because the Almighty was too smart that he was able to see the pros and cons of the upper class clearly. In other words, He knew very well that the gifts given to him had all sorts of motives. 30 days? She didn't say anything. Thinking about it this way, she was indeed quite a scumbag. A domineering CEO could not treat his pet like this. At the very least, he couldn't be so useless. Bojo replied guiltily, "Actually, I've prepared for it, I just didn't remember the date." "Oh." Chin-mo stuffed a hand into his pocket and raised his head. His deep gaze made Bojo's eyes wander unconsciously. Chin-mo arched a brow. "What did you prepare?" Bojo knew the Almighty could tell she was lying and was about to confess. At this moment, Chin-mo spoke again, "Give it to me tomorrow." Was he giving her time to prepare? Bojo understood the Almighty's intentions and nodded. All right. She couldn't really become a piece of trash. "I'm really curious what you are going to give me." Chin-mo spoke slowly. "I don't think you are going to just buy something to deal with me." Bojo. The Almighty's words completely blocked her way to buy something. Was it really unintentional? Chin-mo watched the youngster's depressed expression and his mood improved slightly. In the end, he couldn't help it. He turned around and reached out to pinch her face. "You seem to be in a difficult position." Bojo feigned ignorance. "It's not difficult." Chin-mo laughed. "Is that so? See you tomorrow." "All right," Bojo replied, reaching out to touch her face that had been pinched. Coaxing the Almighty was a battle of wits and courage. She also had to know how to step down. Chin-mo walked forward, occasionally turning back to glance at the dignified person behind him. The corners of his lips lifted silently. Qin Xiaodong, who had been watching from the side, was in a dilemma. After all, there was a distance between them. It wasn't possible for him to hear the conversation between young master and young master Qin. But in front of the two madams, he would have to restrain himself. Most importantly, he couldn't let the goddess notice anything. Qin Xiaodong glanced in Movie Queen Anne's direction guiltily. Movie Queen Anne's expression didn't change. She probably didn't think of young master and young master Qin in that direction. Qin Xiaodong didn't know that his conjecture was completely wrong. Movie Queen Anne watched as the two of them walked over from afar. These two kids are really something. They even have to whisper things. Isn't that so? He Honghua had been suspicious at first, but after hearing Movie Queen Anne's words, she felt relieved. Their relationship was probably too good. But she had to find some time to talk to Joe. She didn't have to worry too much when she was interacting with an upright kid like Chin-mo. She still had to maintain a distance with other boys. Even though she was dressed as a boy, her Joe was still a girl in her heart. He Honghua was still waiting. She was waiting for everything to settle down. When the time was right, she would let her Joe dress as a girl again. That day should be arriving soon. He Honghua thought about it. She had to work harder and take back everything that she had lost in the past. But Joe's identity was special. She had to think about how to dress as a girl again. Everyone had different thoughts. Bojo's mind was filled with thoughts about what to give the Almighty. Even after Movie Queen Anne and Chin-mo's car disappeared into the night, Bojo still hadn't come up with a good idea. What should she give? Bojo was still thinking about this question when she lay on the bed. In the extended Lincoln, once there wasn't anyone else, Movie Queen Anne became more direct. "You were jealous when we talked about Joe's childhood sweetheart, weren't you?" "No." Chin-mo held on to the mineral water bottle, tilting his head to take a sip. From the side of his face, there weren't any signs of jealousy. But there was one thing. Why don't I remember tying my hair when I was young? Movie Queen Anne shifted her gaze subconsciously. She looked out of the car window, her voice muffled. "You were still young then. You couldn't remember. Is that so?" Chin-mo didn't dwell on this question. Instead, he turned on his phone and searched for a certain someone's profile picture on WeChat. He typed a few words over. "Don't forget to bring your present tomorrow." After Bojio received the message, she couldn't fall asleep. She tossed and turned for a while before a thought struck her. She smiled and stood up, walking towards the basement she had remodeled. The moment Bojio entered, the 3 pure white ultra-thin laptops lit up at the same time. Silver icons flashed, just like a scene from a blockbuster movie. If it was something she had personally made, the Almighty might like it. She followed this train of thought. Bojio opened the game official and found the video of their team's competition. With a click of her mouse, she saved, edited. In terms of operation, it wasn't complicated. But it took a lot of time. If she wanted the camera to have a sense of story, she had to find the scene bit by bit. The night sky outside the window was getting darker. Bojio sat in front of the computer, her left hand on the keyboard while her right hand clicked on the mouse. Her beautiful silver hair was messy, but she didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. The Chin family. The lights never went out. This was a unique characteristic of the military compound. Regardless of the time, there would always be soldiers on duty and patrols. Movie Queen stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the swaying white poplar with a heavy heart. It wasn't because of her, but because of the question her son had asked her in the car. Madame Zhang brought a cup of tea over. "Madam, did you have a bad chat with Madame He?" "Of course not." When Movie Queen smiled, there were dimples on her face. "Sister He is a straightforward person and doesn't forget her roots. There aren't many people who can maintain their character after entering the business world. She doesn't compete or lie to herself. A woman is weak but a mother is strong. Jill has a good mother." Madame Zhang laughed. "It seems like the rumors aren't entirely trustworthy." "It isn't at all." Movie Queen lowered her head to take a sip of tea, her brows still furrowed. Madame Zhang was confused. "Then, Madame Zhang, what exactly did Mo go through to lose a portion of his memory?" Movie Queen's question had become a taboo in the family ever since. Madame Zhang didn't know how to answer. No one would be able to forget the young master who had come down from the private plane with blood dripping from his fingers. At that time, his thoughts had been in a mess. Movie Queen knew she wouldn't be able to get an answer. Hence, she took a deep breath. Now, he has started to interact with criminals again. "Madame Zhang, I'm worried that the past will repeat itself." "Madam, don't worry. With young Master Jiu around, it won't happen." Movie Queen broke into a smile. "You're right. Once one thought things through, they would gradually let it go. It was the same for everyone. What they couldn't let go would always be the injustice." In the club, Rao Rong looked at a screenshot of the news. His hand tightened around the mouse. It was an old piece of news about $1 million of embezzled money found in a policeman's house. Because of the double-crossing, the policeman didn't have a good ending. Rao Rong hadn't believed this piece of news at all. He wanted to clear his father's name. When he was young, he had tried many methods. Time and time again, he had hit a wall. He had been expelled from the club and in the end, he had lost all hope. Rao Rong wanted to know who had killed his father. Why had the $1 million appeared in his house? He could only rely on that person. That was reality. He had no choice but to lower his head. "Captain." Lin Shintao rubbed his eyes, switching on the lights. His hair was a mess. "Are you still thinking about the competition?" Rao Rong closed the page and stood up, replying faintly, "MMH." Lin Shintao grabbed his short hair. "It's the team that can't keep up with you. Actually, I have thought that it would be better if Captain went to another team." "It's not that." Rao Rong walked over, glancing at the red mark on his face. "Go to sleep." "Oh." Lin Shintao agreed, but he didn't stop. Ever since Qin Mo got together with Little Spade, his playing style has changed. He's sharp and shameless, getting addicted to the jungle. It's hard to defend against him. Rao Rong paused. In the beginning, that was his playstyle, but it changed. His hand injury was one reason, but as the captain of Supreme Alliance, his first reaction was to look at the big picture, which made him lose his sharpness. Until Spade Z appeared. The Supreme Alliance today is very strong. It was a pity that he could no longer compete with his opponent in a fair and square manner. Rao Rong didn't tell Lin Chintao that. The night continued to fall. The best international hotel in Jiang City was frequented by successful people from all over the world. Director William's Chinese wasn't as accurate as his son's. Fortunately, his son had translated the comments online and sent them to him. He had also mentioned that he would be flying to Jiang City in the next 2 days. It had to be said that William was hesitant after reading the comments. Should he invite the youngster over? He despised people who didn't have a bottom line just for the sake of fame. But this Chinese boy, Joe, fit the image in his heart. It would be a pity to give him up. But as a director, he had to consider all aspects of the crew. It would be better to leave him aside and see if he could find anyone else in China. William looked at the comments on the internet again, shook his head, and turned off the computer regretfully. At this moment, Bo Jiao was still in front of the computer, working on something. Her eyelids were heavy. She took 2 sips from a bottle of mineral water before continuing. It was almost daybreak. Bo Jiao stood up, pressing onto her neck. She glanced down at her watch, preparing to search for the last bit of material on Weibo. Unexpectedly, she received a private message from Sister Turtle. I have a presumptuous request. I would like you to help my friend. The next match will be against the Xiangnan team. I know you're busy, but I've thought about this for a long time. Only you can help my friend. That was the first message. The second message was long. Chapter 936. Web novelist. Bo Jiao's first reaction was that the thorn-head youngster had told her about the female sorcerer who was planning to buy trending searches to deal with a certain web novelist. She moved her mouse. There were more words. I don't know how to persuade her. She asked me a question that I didn't know how to answer. She asked Sister Turtle, why aren't they blaming a thief? Why are they blaming me instead? Is it wrong for me to focus on my writing? Is it wrong for me to protect my rights? I know it's not wrong, but I can't explain those comments to her, those comments that she's creating hype. The perpetrator claimed to be a true fan and started writing a fanfic. Using that as a foundation, he stole the entire framework and published it. In the past, I even tried to persuade my friend to bear with it. This is how the industry is, people don't care about hurting the original author. I've always thought that a person's talent can't be stolen. But today, I realized that I was wrong. I didn't protect her well. I know how much she loves this industry. But because she loves it so much, she doesn't understand. Why is that? She isn't afraid of being copied or how shameless the perpetrator is. She is afraid that one day, the industry will support copyright infringement. What about the people who want to write well? What should they do? They deserve to be stolen. Why should they remain silent? When she asked this question, she lowered her head and muttered to herself, no one cares. Yes, no one cares. Bo Jiao arched a brow at the last sentence. Her fingers moved slightly. The last time she saw these words, it was at the 5th Avenue. The person who liked to lie on top of her had left her a letter with bloodstains. Jiao, do you know that no one cares about the victims? They would say, look, she's so well developed, it's no wonder she's targeted. Perhaps, there's something wrong with her. They wouldn't say that the bastard deserved it. Jiao, why is the world like this? I ask myself every day until midnight. I sit up and stare blankly outside. I'm afraid to make a sound because the moment I say it, the person who helped the bastard will appear. They will say that it's your problem. No one cares that you're already covered in blood when you make a sound. Yes, no one cares. Bo Jiao shut her eyes and opened them again. It was as if he could still see the last sentence before his eyes. I'm so happy that there's still someone in this world who cares. Jill, no, Z, you mustn't become completely black in the future. Bojo tightened her fingers. When she looked at the screen again, her gaze had changed. Her typing speed was very fast, and a few words were typed out. Unfortunately, the person on the other side of the computer wasn't there. The sky outside the window had already begun to brighten. Bojo stood up. When she walked out of the basement, there was only a USB in her hand. It seemed like he should make a trip to school. He wanted to see what was going on with Li Shui. As for the Almighty's gift, she would personally give it to him. Bojo lifted her lids and glanced at the clock hanging in the living room. Seeing that she wouldn't be able to sleep for another hour, she found a sofa to sleep. When the sun truly rose. When Chen Xiaodong came out of his room, he saw the young master in his school uniform sitting on the sofa yawning. Chen Xiaodong was stunned. "Young master, aren't you training today?" "Training, go down." Bojo stood up, casually taking a piece of bread and placing it in her mouth. Then she lifted her slanted school bag and swung it behind her, looking very handsome from head to toe. When Chen Xiaodong saw his young master's attire, he couldn't even be bothered to eat breakfast. He hurriedly followed her out of the house. Ever since the regional competition, Bojo rarely appeared in school. Hence, when everyone saw the tall, slender, and silver-haired youngster on the skateboard once again, almost all the students in No. 1 middle school were excited. The only person who didn't welcome her was probably the security guard at the entrance. The moment this youngster appeared, he had to look at the top of the wall. He was alone, how could he see so many places? Besides, wasn't it a little too crowded today? The security guard tried his best to maintain his dignity, but waves and waves of people rushed over and attacked him 3 times. Every girl who ran over with her hands covering her face said, "Did you know? His Highness Joe came to school today." "Really? Where is he? Where is my Almighty? Please, that's my hubby." "Stop arguing, isn't the National League Finals about to begin? Why does His Highness Joe have the time to come to school? Who cares about him? Since His Highness Joe is here, we should capture him alive and take photos." "Ah, His Highness Joe, he's there." One of the girls suddenly reached out and pointed at the entrance of the 5th teaching block. It was indeed Bojo. That head of silver hair and sharp features made the people around the youngster a little dazed. Bojo held the black skateboard with one hand and strolled into the classroom. "Ah, ah, ah." Screams came one after another. No one would have expected that the gay they looked down on would actually enter the National League Finals and become an esports star with millions of fans. In the past, there might have been people who objected to Bojo being the school hunk. But now, almost everyone acknowledged the title. Even when the other schools said that they only had nerds and they weren't as handsome as them, they simply took a screenshot. Regardless of whether it was the youngster playing games or reading a book with a lollipop in his mouth, it was enough to destroy the school hunks. Is he from No. 1 middle school too? Nerd? No. The girls from every school were saying, "Principal, you owe me a spade Z. If Big Black is in our school, even if it's raining or thundering, I won't delay my classes and report every day." Being envious of No. 1 middle school for having such a school hunk had become a popular phrase among the students. Hence, when Bojo stepped into the school grounds, it was easy to imagine the scene. How boring. A girl in the crowd scoffed. She brushed past Bojo and sneered, "He's just playing games and has a slightly better face. Do they have to chase after him so much? Have they forgotten what he was like in the past? He wasn't even presentable." Her friend paused for a moment. "Li Shui, that's not very nice." "What's not nice about it?" Li Shui pouted. "He might even cheat during competitions. I played with him previously and his skills weren't that good. How could he be a professional player?" "That's right." A few people who were close to Li Shui spoke up. "He doesn't qualify at all and has a fragile heart. I heard he can't stand his fans talking bad about him." Li Shui chuckled. Isn't that the same as a certain someone? Alright, let's continue playing in the group tonight. My dad has already prepared everything for me. In the future, I won't just publish my book, I'll publish everything you guys have written. As for that person, I'll piss her off, ha ha ha. Did the people in the group notice? Notice what? They support me, and after finding out about this, they feel that the author has a fragile heart. She's the only one who feels aggrieved. I'm not in a good mood today. When we enter the group later, I'll get them to sing for me. These kids are easy to coax. Li Shui, you're really something. But I heard that the author isn't willing to give in. Are we really fine? Infringement of rights has to go through legal procedures. With my dad around, what's there to be afraid of? Once it's trending, I'll make sure she can't survive in this industry. Is that really fine? She has quite a lot of fans. What's the use of fans? Aren't they all on my side? Don't worry, we'll do what we need to do. I've done my research. It's fine, the environment is like that. What can she do? That's good. All three of them had a smug look on their faces. They were still thinking about how to piss the author off. Anyway, someone was helping them. Their current position was true fans who were slandered by the author. No one would think that they were in the same industry. The author was a fool. She was the one who insisted on saying it. Wouldn't she be going against them if she said it? She was really asking for it. But Li Shui lifted her thin lips. She was going to be an author in the future. Once her dad packaged her, she would become popular. Who would know who that woman was in the future? Oh right, if that woman still dared to cause trouble in the future. She would just say that she wanted to borrow her popularity. This was a trick that worked every single time. When Li Shui said these words, she didn't know that everything she said had been recorded. The person who recorded it wasn't anyone else but Bojiu. It wasn't hard for Bojiu to figure out when the recording had been placed on Li Shui's uniform. Brushing past her was enough to complete the task. Bojiu listened to the sound coming from her phone. She sat in the classroom and glanced at the English teacher who had just walked in. She swiped her fingers and logged into her phone, intending to send the recording to Sister Turtle. Unexpectedly, the other side sent a private message faster than her. It's too late. What do you mean by it's too late? Bojiu's fingers paused. There wasn't any other message. Until the end of the class. It was a voice message in tears. She couldn't take it anymore. She left. Bojiu stood up abruptly. As she walked out, she typed, "Send me your phone number." Very quickly, a string of numbers appeared on the screen. Bojiu called her directly. "Where are you?" "The police station." Sister Turtle's voice was heavy. They said that she committed suicide and that she had something to do with the maiden's sacrifice. Bojiu narrowed her eyes. The maiden's sacrifice? Yes. Sister Turtle's voice was hoarse. I don't believe that she would commit suicide. She could even endure chemotherapy. How could she not be able to endure such things? Bojiu didn't reply. She didn't know what to say. Her gaze was empty. Sister Turtle's sobs were getting softer. There was nothing else. It was just sobs. There was another sentence. I don't believe that she would choose such a method to end everything. Why? Why did this happen? In the past, when Bojiu had hugged the corpse, she had asked herself the same question. How terrible had it been? Why had it ended in such a manner? Wasn't this world worthy of her nostalgia? Even if it was just a little. After that, Bojiu had gone to see a psychologist. The psychologist smoked a cigarette and said, it's probably because she was too desperate. Bojiu looked at her phone. Even at this moment. Someone had left a comment under the author's post. Are you the only one who feels aggrieved? Is there nothing else to write? Even if she really infringed on your copyright, you shouldn't have done this. Bojiu shut her eyes. For a moment, she wondered why she was still so useless after so many years. Why had she allowed such a thing to happen in front of her? She hadn't been able to stop it at all. Why hadn't she become completely black? She could have lived happily like those people. That was Bojio's truest thought. Even if you were black, I would rather you be alive. But Bojio knew that some people wouldn't. They couldn't find a way out. They would rather understand or carry on with their lives. It wasn't a long journey from the school to the police station. Bojio saw Sister Turtle sitting on the chair, hugging her. Her tears couldn't stop. She didn't cry, but she just couldn't stop them. Sister Turtle looked at the youngster who had rushed over. She didn't know what she was saying. She promised to watch your competition with me. She said she wanted to see my idol. She wanted to see how good he was. She even said she would buy a dress with me. Her last sentence. Sister Turtle didn't finish her sentence. Bojio reached out and hugged the person whose shoulders were trembling. It was too painful to lose her. Especially when she had lost her best friend since young. That girl had once taught you to treat others well. But she had never been treated well in her entire life. Bojio clenched her fists tightly, her fingertips digging into her palms. Sister Turtle stopped crying but continued. She even cleaned the house. She said she wanted to show her mother that she was living well outside. Bojio glanced up abruptly. You're saying that she cleaned the house? When did she do it? Last night. Sister Turtle was immersed in her own emotions. Her reply was instinctive. But Bojio's questions were never instinctive. Who would clean the house before committing suicide? It wasn't logical. She didn't pause at all. Bojio walked to the side and dialed a string of numbers. The person who picked up the call was drying his hair. Water droplets flowed down his sharp chin. His bare feet were on the wooden floor. He was dressed in a cotton homewear. His features were clear and handsome. Gentle as jade, these 4 words were the most suitable to describe him. Who else could it be other than Hoshino? Bojio lowered her voice. Hoshino, I need you to help me check. Bojio's tone deepened. Hoshino placed the towel on the table. His beautiful eyes shone brightly. You think she didn't commit suicide but was murdered? Yes. Bojio didn't deny it. That's why I need you to find more detailed information to prove my theory. Chapter 937. While Bojio had been speaking, Hoshino had already turned on the laptop screen. As soon as he said the word, good, his fingers, which were tapping on the keyboard, suddenly stopped. This isn't that simple. I agree with you, she didn't commit suicide, but there's a video that isn't good for her. The video shows that she has a mental problem. Bojio walked further away. What video? I'll send it to you. As Hoshino spoke, he glanced at the comment below and added, do you have something in your hands now? Bojio replied. The recording of the perpetrator. Don't send it. Hoshino's voice softened. Bojio frowned. What did you find out? The perpetrator wants everyone to think that it was a suicide because the author couldn't stand the copyright infringement and chose to end her life in such a manner. Hoshino placed the mouse down and glanced up. The perpetrator recorded her actions before her death. Their motive is clear. If you send the evidence, the perpetrator will escape. If you don't send the evidence, she will still be in pain until her death because the person who destroyed her faith and stole from her is still on the loose. Hoshino glanced at the drifting clouds outside the window. Someone just wants to shut your mouth. What are you going to do? I won't let either of them off. In that instant, Bojio's gaze was dark and extremely cold. Hoshino chuckled and reached out to tap the mouse. Alright, there's a problem with the video. It isn't because of the production but because of the unusual reaction of the victim. Someone said that her reaction proved that she had lost her mind. After entering the elevator, she pressed the floor she was on. Then, she suddenly changed and pressed the number 2. She peeked out and glanced out of the elevator with wariness in her eyes. She did this twice as though she was checking for safety. After that, she returned to the elevator and disappeared from the surveillance. When she reappeared, she was sitting in front of her computer. After reading the comments that supported the perpetrator, she hugged herself in depression. Then, she seemed to really want to commit suicide. She picked up a bottle of medicine and drank at least 5 pills with her back facing the computer. Finally, she looked into the camera with a pained expression. The video ended at this point. There's one thing worth noting. No one would call their mother before committing suicide. But this person did. Even though she didn't speak much and wasn't in a good mood, it didn't seem like something a suicidal person would do. Of course, she could have been forcing herself. Then, she fell asleep and slept until the video was released and the corpse was discovered. Bojio's eyes dimmed. You're saying that the video was released before the corpse was discovered? Yes. Hoshino hit the enter key. She first posted a message on the internet and then started the live broadcast. When the police found her, it was already too late. Hence, to prove that she didn't commit suicide, we have to solve this mystery. Since she didn't commit suicide, why was there a live broadcast? With that, Hoshino stood up. We need that person to explain. She has to analyze the victim's actions and find a logical explanation. Bojio glanced up. Hoshino walked to the window and said the name that both of them thought of. Chin Mo. After Hoshino finished speaking, Bojio paused. Bojio paused for a moment, not because of anything else, but because of the tall figure that appeared in front of her. The man was wearing a black trench coat with a white shirt underneath. His slender fingers held a slender cigarette as he looked at her. This kind of attire only made him look more elegant and handsome. The Almighty. Bojio's eyes lit up. Chin Mo walked over, reaching out to pat her head. Who are you calling? He probably hadn't heard the contents of her conversation. A friend, Bojio replied as she listened to the busy tone. Hoshino hung up just in time. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster's hand. It was an anonymous number. Bojio didn't want the Almighty to be interested in her conversation, hence, she went straight to the point. Brother Mo, I have a video for you to watch. With that, she tapped on her phone. When she searched, she realized that the video had been blocked. It was a normal measure to maintain order. Such a video wasn't suitable to stay online for long. If you're referring to the video regarding the online writer, I've seen it. Chin Mo lifted her chin, his deep gaze looking into her eyes. Tell me your suspicions. Bojio replied softly, I don't think she committed suicide, but there are many things that I can't understand. Let's go take a look at the scene. Chin Mo didn't deny her words. Bojio nodded, leaving the Almighty to wait. She walked over to speak to Sister Turtle before returning to Chin Mo's side. Let's go. Chin Mo glanced at her. It seems like you already knew about it. Why didn't you call me? It wasn't an easy question for Bojio to answer. Chin Mo didn't continue asking because 3 people were walking over from the side. Bojio recognized one of them. It was Li Shui, the one who had infringed on her copyright. With such a huge incident, the police would definitely ask her to come over to give a statement. But before they reached the station, Li Shui couldn't help but complain. What is going on? She has a fragile heart and yet, she wants me to suffer as well. The policeman wasn't a hot-blooded person. He couldn't take it anymore and turned to glance at her. You had a conflict online and you infringed on her copyright. She isn't fragile, right? Uncle, don't spout nonsense. Li Shui raised her eyebrows. All I did was create a fan group and write some fanfiction. I used to like her book quite a lot. She, as an author, has wronged me like this. I haven't even had the chance to complain about it. It's as if she's the only one who's wronged. But after the incident last time, I've already given up on the book. The person beside Li Shui laughed. Sir, we are here to solve the problem. It isn't good to be so harsh. There are many plots in this industry. It's just a joke, it isn't an infringement. As for my client's fan group, it isn't against the law, right? At the end of the day, the victim's mental fortitude was too weak. She should have gone to see a doctor if she had mental problems. Why did she end up losing her life? That's right. Li Shui wasn't wrong. The book she had imitated was selling well. It wouldn't be long before it would be released into a movie. She wasn't happy about this. Her fans are brainless. They keep finding trouble with me. I wasn't the one who asked her to die. You police should take care of them and stop them from slandering me. Bojiu clenched her fists as she listened to them. She clenched her fists until her palms were red. Only then could she control the violence in her heart. The evidence in her hands was enough to make this person pay the price. But now wasn't the time. Because she knew very well what kind of comments there were on the internet. The victim was dead. The people were still talking. She really has a weak mental fortitude. It's better for someone with a fragile heart to stop writing novels. I saw Li Shui's novel. It's good. Even though it looks similar, aren't all plots like this? I was going to get her to apologize to Great Master Li Shui. She's so annoying. Now, she's finally quiet. I've seen the video. She's just a mentally ill person. Normal people wouldn't behave like her. Bojiu had always believed that the dead were the most important, especially those who had died unfairly. But it was obvious that some people didn't think the same. That person was no longer around. The comments that left her with cuts and bruises wouldn't stop. Hence, he couldn't allow her to leave with such an ambiguous ending. Bojiu was probably clenching her fists too tightly. Qin Mo's hand landed on her wrist. He pulled her up, his voice calm. Open up. Bojiu paused, looking at the Almighty. Qin Mo seemed to be at his wit's end. He suddenly leaned forward, planting a kiss on her fist. This time, Bojiu opened up. It was a natural reaction. She hadn't expected such a move from the Almighty. Qin Mo watched the red marks on her palm. His eyes dimmed. I didn't know you had such masochistic tendencies. I just used a little more force. Bojiu was embarrassed. She found an excuse. I'm probably too good at fighting and can't control my strength. Do you know that person? Qin Mo tapped the youngster's palm. Bojiu shrunk in pain. Which one? The one who spoke. Qin Mo held the youngster's hand, holding it in his hand. Bojiu reluctantly allowed herself to be held by the Almighty. She didn't speak much. It wasn't like her usual self. Qin Mo glanced over, combining what he had heard and his understanding of a certain someone. You have evidence of this person. It wasn't a question. Bojiu paused before asking, how did you know? I can tell. Qin Mo glanced at her, his gaze unwavering as he walked forward. Why didn't you post it? Bojiu puffed up her cheeks. I can't post it. Seems like you're abiding by the law now. Qin Mo couldn't help pinching the youngster. Bojiu was dumbfounded. Don't worry. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. I'll let you post it. Anyone who does it will receive the punishment they deserve. Bojiu had always known that the Almighty was different. Regardless of how things changed around him. He was like the brightest star in the sky, untainted by any dust. Qin Mo paused in front of the Hummer. Shouldn't you do something to make me happy? Bojiu understood. She smiled devilishly and leaned forward, wanting to kiss the Almighty. Unexpectedly, the Almighty pressed her head down, his brows slightly furrowed. You want to kiss me? What else? Bojiu arched a brow. Present, Qin Mo reminded her faintly. So that was the reason. How awkward, she thought the Almighty wanted her to kiss him. If you really want to kiss me, you can kiss me too. Qin Mo lifted his lips into a smile. It was obvious that he knew what she was thinking. This time, Bojo didn't fall for the trap. She reached into her pocket and took out a USB. That USB flash drive was obviously not an ordinary USB flash drive. It wasn't just the material but also the appearance. The word 9 was engraved on the silver surface. Pushing it to the side, it was an electronic cigarette lighter. This wasn't the only USB Bojo had given him. In fact, as early as when she was young, the night before she left with her father, she had placed a USB drive like this on his cabinet. Now that she thought about it, the Almighty probably hadn't discovered it. Or perhaps he had, but he had forgotten about it. Is it for me? Chin Mo asked. Bojo wanted to tell him how to use it. Chin Mo moved his hand to the side. Why? Do you want it back after giving me a present? No, Bojo replied. Other than the cigarette lighter, there's a second present inside. You can read it by inserting it into the laptop. Chin Mo smiled. It was a rare smile. It was like the sunlight shining through a bottle of mineral water. It was clean and beautiful. Bojo watched his smile, her heart skipping a beat. Hence, when Chin Mo kissed her, her fingers didn't react. It was a light kiss, as though he was eating a mint candy, slightly cold and sweet. She finally understood how those overbearing CEOs felt when they bought things for their mistresses. $1,000 for a beauty's smile. That was probably it. But ever since they had boarded the car, the Almighty hadn't glanced at her. One of his hands was holding hers while the other was playing with the USB lighter. He must be in a good mood. Bojo's good mood was contagious, the viciousness in her chest dissipating. When the Hummer stopped in a small area, the Almighty held her hand and entered the elevator, pressing the floor of the deceased. But very quickly, he pressed the number 2 and walked out of the elevator. He glanced left and right before walking back. Bojo glanced up. The Almighty was recreating the scene himself. Chin Mo watched her, his voice calm. Many people think that her actions are a reflection of her mental state. Actually, that isn't the case. Bojo finished his sentence. Chin Mo pressed the button to close the elevator 4 times. What do you think is wrong with my actions? Panic. Bojo paused. She's afraid. A normal person wouldn't press the elevator button in such a manner. Chin Mo watched as the elevator doors opened and walked out. That's right, she was afraid. When she entered the elevator, she pressed the number 2 so quickly, which means she sensed danger. The only explanation I can think of is that she suspected someone was following her. That's why she acted that way. But there wasn't anyone else in the video. Chapter 938. That's not all. Chin Mo walked to the door, turning back to look at Bojo. There aren't any surveillance cameras in the entire corridor, which means even if someone really followed her, there wouldn't be any traces left. Bojo had noticed this as well. That was why it was so difficult to gather evidence. A woman's sixth sense isn't completely baseless. Chin Mo's voice was calm. Compared to what the eyes can see, psychological actions are much faster. As the crime scene, there would definitely be police officers around. Even if the victim was no longer around, there would still be traces left behind. Such a sensational case wouldn't be handled by an ordinary department, hence, it would be handed over to the crime squad. The moment Bojo entered, she saw Director Huang with a solemn expression. Did you find anything? Director Huang shook his head, his white-gloved hand moving the mouse. Director Huang shook his head, his white-gloved hand moving the mouse. I got someone to check, there wasn't anyone else recording her. It was indeed this laptop that recorded her actions, and from the angle of the video, it was the same. We have completely ruled out the possibility of a homicide. As for the medication she took before her death, we have found the bottle. It was an ordinary sleeping pill, but if taken in large quantities, it could be fatal. She didn't force herself to take the medication, so your judgment was wrong this time. Director Huang sighed. The possibility of suicide is 99%. Isn't there still 1%? Qin Mo walked over, taking a closer look. He even picked up the teacup. There were traces of coffee in the cup, and beside it was a French pressure pot that was specially used for brewing coffee. The room wasn't particularly clean, but it had a certain ambience. There were 2 words written on the cup, "All the best." This cup is custom-made. Bo Jiu was familiar with such things, turning her fingers. As expected, there were a few names engraved on the bottom of the cup. They were all single words. MMH, Director Huang replied. This cup is a gift from the readers. Is there a problem? No. Bo Jiu glanced up. I just don't think someone loved by so many would choose to commit suicide. Director Huang paused. That's just a guess based on your feelings. He didn't want to believe that a person would leave in such a manner. I need evidence. Director Huang had met the victim's mother. She had been holding onto his hand, saying, "Believe me, my daughter wouldn't commit suicide. I beg you, believe me." Director Huang was used to such situations. He didn't know how to console the other party. However, he had never seen such a mother who was so sure that her daughter did not commit suicide. Let him look for more clues. Because of this, he had been hesitant, even leaving the scene as it was. But he couldn't find any evidence at all. After the deceased came in that night, no one else came to this floor in the elevator. There were no surveillance cameras in the corridor, and all the clues came from the neighbors. However, the neighbor went to bed early. He was an office worker who worked from 9 to 5. He did not feel that anything was wrong. What about the neighbors? Qin Mo placed the cup down. Director Huang pointed to the room next door. This is the second time he has to take a statement. He still has to work. That person was indeed very busy. He raised his hand to look at his watch, and his mouth was a little dry. I've told you everything I need to say. I really don't know anything, and I didn't hear anything. Everything was normal that day, and there were no suspicious people. That was what Qin Mo and Bo Jiu heard when they walked over. Qin Mo sat opposite the neighbor. Other than that day, what about the rest of the time? Did you see anyone come looking for her? Just 3 to 4 times, the neighbor recalled. There was a woman with long curly hair who kept coming over recently. She was the one who opened the door. She should be her friend. But now that you mentioned it, I remember something. About 2 days ago, a tall and skinny man came out from her place. I have a feeling that he was a thief. It has been 5 to 6 days, and she even asked me if there was a burglar in the building. But I don't think it has anything to do with the case. Anyway, everything was normal that day, nothing happened. Qin Mo's hand stilled. I understand, thank you for your cooperation. You can go to work now. The man heaved a sigh of relief, turning towards Qin Mo. I hope you can solve the case soon. This person isn't bad. He would always greet me in the elevator when I leave. I always forget to bring my keys and would always trouble the neighbor to open the door for me. Now that he has left, honestly, my heart feels empty and afraid. If you have any questions, you can look for me. Just try to ask after work. All right. On the other side, Qin Mo closed his notebook. On the other side, Bo Jiu had already called Sister Turtle. The first question she asked was, does she have a boyfriend? Sister Turtle didn't need to mention who she was. Her voice was still hoarse. No, she rarely writes or goes on blind dates. She doesn't have many male friends and they are all in her hometown. I tried to persuade her to find a boyfriend so she wouldn't feel so bad. All of them are in her hometown. Did anyone come to Jiang City recently? Bo Jiu asked carefully. Sister Turtle wasn't stupid. No, Spade, did you find something? A little. Bo Jiu replied faintly, it's not convenient for me to reveal, but as her friend, I would like to know more about her daily interactions and what kind of person she is. Sister Turtle seemed to relax slightly. Sister Turtle seemed to relax a little. She has a lot of friends, but under normal circumstances, she would not talk about herself. After all, whatever she has encountered is related to her work. Not many people in real life know her pen name. This is probably a characteristic of us writers, where the internet and our lives are separated. It's just that this time's injustice was too much of a blow to her. She has thought about stopping writing like me. To be honest, everyone has a time when they can't hold on anymore, but I don't believe that she would commit suicide. You know, Spade, she said that she always believed that justice may be late, but it will never be absent. Bojo froze. As for what kind of person she is. Sister Turtle's gaze wavered. Take a look at her writings. When Bojo heard this, she glanced over. The Almighty was already seated in front of the computer, his right hand moving the mouse. He was reading a story, a Word document left behind by the computer owner. After Bojo hung up, she walked over. The Word document was automatically saved. Since the laptop hadn't been closed, the cursor hovered at the position. It was the position where she had typed her last words. It feels like I'm living in hell, perhaps a place scarier than hell. I feel like I'm living in hell, or maybe it's a place scarier than hell, but the miracle is that the flowers that bloom in hell are more tenacious. I'm glad that I met you guys, glad that I'm able to write what I want to write under your company. Many people think that this is a war, but it's not. I'm just making the weakest voice I can after encountering injustice. I hope that my voice can influence some people. I hope that they won't become beasts and thieves, so that the original creators will be disappointed. I hope that after they graduate, when they encounter injustice, they will be able to speak out bravely instead of keeping it in their hearts. I hope that they know that no matter how lonely and afraid they are now, there will always be a group of people who will pass through the surging crowd to give them a hug. You're not alone, there's still justice. Human nature can't be understood, but I'll be with you guys, just like you guys used to accompany me. Bojo didn't understand this industry, but she had the basic ability to read and understand. A person who can write these words wouldn't commit suicide. The most important thing is the last sentence. I will be by your side. Bojo turned away from Chin Mo, her fingers tapping the screen. This sentence means to continue. Chin Mo glanced at the youngster's sharp chin, which was very close to him. Smart, but this can't be used as evidence. Director Huang nodded. Bojo clenched her fists tightly. Chin Mo caressed her head. But no one would have the mood to drink coffee before committing suicide. Besides, we can confirm that our previous guess is correct, someone is approaching her. Before Chin Mo could finish his sentence, a round of applause came from the other side. It seems like I came at the wrong time. It was Smith. He was still dressed in a well-ironed suit with a British style, making him look like a famous detective. After hearing young Master Chin's shocking words, I understand why you would think that someone is approaching her. It must be because of the witness's testimony regarding the burglar. The burglar did exist and entered her room, perhaps even stealing her things. But this has nothing to do with her suicide. There weren't any traces at the crime scene, be it fingerprints or other traces. The cause of her death was the sleeping pills she had consumed. If we were to forcefully consider it as a homicide, the person who caused her pain would escape punishment. However, China doesn't seem to have a specific law in this aspect. Now that the culprit has been bailed out and isn't affected, this case should end here. Director Huang was about to say something when Smith spoke again. There was a piece of paper in his hand. The higher-ups have given orders for me to be in charge of this case. Hence, we have to invite the external staff to head out. It's better to end our speculations here. With that, Smith gestured for Chin Mo to leave. With Director Huang's temper, he couldn't take it anymore. Chin Mo's expression was nonchalant. Bojo arched a brow. With the Almighty in this state, the other party would only be in trouble. She hadn't expected to meet the Almighty's gaze. Smith must have treated the Almighty as a formidable opponent, which was why he had gotten so close to him. He was trying to create a tit for tat. But he hadn't noticed the Almighty's gaze. To a certain extent, they had a telepathic connection. After sensing the Almighty's gaze, Bojio brushed past him, an item appearing in her left hand. She stuffed her left hand into her pocket as though nothing had happened. Director Huang stilled. He knew what the youngster had taken. It was the medicine box in his palm. But it was obvious who had given the youngster the medicine box. What were they trying to do with the evidence? Director Huang couldn't figure it out, but he didn't say it out loud. One day. Give the two of them another day's time. If the verdict was still a suicide after one day, then the parents of the deceased would be allowed to go home. Director Huang wasn't able to face the mother even though he was an adult. As an experienced detective, he knew there was something wrong with the case. But without evidence, he couldn't speak carelessly. Everything had to be based on evidence. He hoped to be able to provide evidence for the two of them. Smith was still basking in his superiority in front of Qin Mo, oblivious to her actions. He smiled. Young Master Qin, it's best to hand over your temporary identification. Coming to the crime scene without informing me is putting us at a disadvantage. The moment he said that, the rest of the crime squad turned over. What was he trying to do? Was he trying to make young Master Qin a mere figurehead? Director Huang's face darkened, turning ugly. Since I'm in charge, I can't be careless. Young Master Qin, I'm sorry. This time, Qin Mo didn't bother looking at him. Swoosh. Something seemed to have brushed past his face, stabbing into the wooden table behind him. It pierced into the wood. He couldn't help trembling. Qin Mo wasn't affected, bringing the youngster out of the apartment. Director Huang gritted his teeth in anger. Was Smith here to harm him? It hadn't been easy for him to become a member of the crime squad. He had only handed over a temporary identification because he didn't want to. Now that he had thrown the identification back, it would be hard to get it back. Smith, if he wasn't stupid, then there was something wrong with him. Director Huang's eyes dimmed. Could it be him? The spy who had been discovered when Qin Mo had approached the drug dealer? He couldn't be sure, hence, he had to observe. Smith didn't seem to be acting strangely. At this moment, Bojio and Qin Mo got into the car. Bojio opened her palm. It was a bottle of medicine, evidence from the crime scene. You suspect there's something wrong with the medicine? Bojio asked Qin Mo. Qin Mo pressed his fingers on her wound. When she wasn't hurting anymore, he replied, "It's fine, it seems like it's healed." What a shocking recovery speed. Bojio muttered softly, as the overbearing sugar daddy, how can he be defeated by such a small injury? What did you say? Qin Mo arched a brow. Bojio cleared her throat, smiling devilishly. Nothing. The Almighty's ears were really sharp. Is that so? Qin Mo asked slowly. Why did I hear the words sugar daddy? Bojio replied seriously, you heard wrongly. Qin Mo glanced at her nonchalantly, especially when she looked so serious. He wanted to pinch her. Qin Mo reached out to pinch her face, lowering the bait. Do you want to hear my analysis? Of course. Bojio knew the Almighty must have found something. Qin Mo retracted his hand, his face noble. Then let's be honest. Bojio asked, am I being dishonest? The Almighty replied, you haven't taken the bath you promised. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.